just continue to volley them into this crowd. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Perhaps they're just hoping they stand their ground because you have the mounted horses right there. If they did what they did a moment ago when they were barricading themselves and just move the horses in the line of officers in, you can break that up and get some of that equipment back under city control. And it's also questionable why that was so available to people today when it's not moored to the ground. Yeah, every time trash cans are not movable, they're attached to the ground, so they can't be used as weapons like this. I know these chairs and tables, I believe, are from the steps that leads to the different levels, maybe up to Dorothy Chandler Pavilion.
Right.
There are those chairs throughout Grand Park, which reaches different levels. But it's just questionable why that was so readily available for this crowd to use. There's a bench that they were able to dislodge and move, and you see this wall of chairs and tables that they've now posted up here right outside City Hall.
And there are a few of these scenes, too. We saw a little bit earlier when these protesters created these barricades, these barriers with these tables. And I think this is the first time that we've seen it with the benches. I don't think the other barricaded area even had these benches, but we saw the police officers did come toward them with the horses. And I think that is them. It's kind of hard to tell because it's zoomed out, but I think Gabe is about to zoom in for us. I think those are the police officers right there. I don't believe these are the ones on the horses, though.
No, the horses are just on the catty corner in this intersection.
Okay. Because when they start coming toward them with the horses, that's when we see those barricaded areas start dispersing. So we'll see when they make that move. But as of right now, the protesters have barricaded themselves behind those chairs.
In the meantime, Governor Newsom is observing the situation. He's posted several tweets this afternoon and this evening, writing, "Trump is trying to manufacture a crisis in LA County, deploying troops not for order, but to create chaos. Don't take the bait. Never use violence or harm law enforcement." Less than an hour ago, the governor wrote, "Despite protests already being managed by the LAPD, President Trump is escalating the situation by threatening to deploy roughly 500 active duty Marines to the streets of Los Angeles." He writes, "Los Angeles, remain peaceful. Don't fall into the trap that extremists are hoping for." And that 500 active duty Marines threat was first put out by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and is now being repeated by President Trump, saying he will do whatever he needs to do to maintain law and order. By and large, that is not something that a president can do. You cannot turn U.S. troops against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil unless you're using the Insurrection Act. Is this grounds to use the Insurrection? Could under any circumstances, legal, moral, could this be deemed an insurrection against the United States?
This is where I would love if we had a legal expert to be here and answering the questions for us, because that is such a good point. And I'm curious, is that the next step? If it's not the National Guard is here, but the next step after the National Guard, is it the Marines? And does it stop there? Does he deploy the Army, Navy, Air Force? What's the step? This just seems everything is so out of order. And
Well, in Trump's first term, he elicited hopes and desires to use weaponry against U.S. citizens. There's that famous day in Washington, D.C. when the president wanted to walk across the grounds to the church, through Lafayette Park to the nearby church there, and wanted U.S. troops to be on the ground to shoot at the legs of demonstrators who were outside the White House. And so he has expressed a desire to fire upon using U.S. military means against U.S. citizens, which would be wildly against anything written in our Constitution and our laws. And again, now there is an open threat from the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense to do exactly that, using an insurrection act that looks like it does not have the grounds to be used here. I'm sure there will some that will call this an insurrection, but we're talking legal grounds. Does the president, in this instance, have the legal grounds to declare this an insurrection against the United States and deploy U.S. military troops against U.S. citizens, which is strictly forbidden by the U.S. Constitution?
It will be really interesting to see how this is all going to unfold, if that's going to happen. Looking back outside, live back at downtown LA, we have that aerial view and still showing the protesters going strong, 7:04 this evening. There is some good news here you can see on the screen. So that looks like a live picture. So the fire department is there. We had those 3 Waymo cars on fire, and we had 5 Waymo cars, on fire. And it looks like from that white smoke, they have taken care of that. So that was successful. Let's just hope that we don't see any more EV fires like what we saw there, anything else that the fire department has to get involved. But what is this? We're seeing some more.
This is the remnants of the
shots.
Waymos.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow.
Right. Nothing left but all the plastic is now melted. A lot of the metal is likely melted as well. That's something we observed in the fires in January, is that these things can get so hot that it just starts melting the aluminum and the metals therein. There was actually an alert sent out by the LAPD today warning about the air quality because of these fires. It says that from LAPD Central Division, a traffic advisory to media partners, demonstrators, and others who may enter the area of Los Angeles Street north of Arcadia. Burning lithium-ion batteries release toxic gases, including hydrogen fluoride, posing risks to responders and those nearby. Please avoid this area.
Exactly. We were just talking about that a few hours ago, too. And just thinking the protesters, they did this without thinking about the consequences. Exactly. All of those toxic gases in the air. You really shouldn't be breathing in that stuff. And then looking at the remnants right now, it's still there. Those toxic fumes, they're still in the air. Tim Caputo described it as smelling like a dumpster fire. So obviously it doesn't smell good downtown. And not just that, but the air quality, that's definitely not a place that you want to be.
Right. So the governor has met with the chief of police of the LAPD and LA County Sheriff Robert Luna. We do have a picture we're working on showing you the officials gathered in Los Angeles, state emergency officials, as they say they're responding to the protests provoked by chaos from Washington. That is from the governor, provoked by chaos from Washington. The governor writing, "We're here to keep the peace, not play into Trump's political games." And we do expect to hear a press conference from the LAPD, likely from the sheriff's department as well. And we believe the governor will be there as well. So he is in Los Angeles tonight monitoring the situation with the chief of the LAPD, Jim McDonnell, and the sheriff, as well as other officials from around the city. California Highway Patrol, I see. So they posted a picture. I'm just trying to see what officials are gathered here. It looks like other sheriff officials, CHP is likely there, LAPD, and I'm not sure. I highly doubt that any feds are in this meeting, given the tone and words of what the governor is saying here, provoked by chaos from Washington, blaming this solely on President Trump and his actions and the actions of his administration. But we will see here in less than an hour, we plan to hear from the LAPD, and we believe Governor Gavin Newsom as well.
Right. There are 2 men. Their backs are toward the camera. They look like they're in civilian clothes. Obviously, they're not civilians, but it makes you think, what kind of higher up law enforcement is this? They have black polos on, so it'll be interesting to see who they are. We'll see that in the next hour or so with that press conference.
Right, and all this is playing out once again as the governor of California and the state is now in direct confrontation with the president of the United States and the federal government. The president last night ordering the federalization of 2,000 members of the California National Guard. He did so without the request or approval of the governor of California. That's how this typically works. If there's a problem, if there is a need, a governor of a state requests from the federal government assistance federalizing those troops. That did not happen here. Governor Gavin Newsom has now formally requested that the Trump administration rescind that deployment of troops. I'm reading from the governor's tweet. He calls this an unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County. He says, return them to my command. That is the governor of California talking to the president of the United States and his administration, saying, return them to my command. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved, the governor writing. This is a serious breach of state sovereignty, inflaming tensions while pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Rescind the order, return control to California.
Right. President Trump, absolutely. He bypassed Governor Newsom and he deployed those 2,000 National Guard troops. And obviously, we've seen from the protests today that definitely spiked up the anger level. It looks like it went up a notch, too. Protesters definitely upset about that.
Okay, we see that, I believe, those are the feds moving through. These are the same vehicles that, this is Homeland Security moving through the same vehicles that we saw that man try and smash the back window out with his bike over by Tim Caputo.
Yeah.
They are driving by those mounted officers who at some point we assume will likely move in on those gathered in front of
The park?
City Hall. Right,
Oh,
so
okay.
right down here, City Hall is to the right, Grand Park is to the left, the courthouse is just up and around the corner, up the hill from this location. And those Homeland Security vehicles are moving through. The LAPD with those mounted officers are holding their position, basically, I guess, letting these folks just kind of play around, hiding behind their barricade.
Right.
But I think the volley of non-lethals has continued from LAPD officers as we see them continue to fortify their line there, stacking those benches and tables up and standing behind them. What they hope to accomplish here, what the purpose of this is, I'm not even sure if there is a purpose, just kind of continue this going throughout the afternoon, and they are continuing to hurl things back at those officers. At what point does the LAPD say this is enough? We're going to restore control of this area. It's right outside City Hall. It's right by the park. Again, those pink chairs and benches and tables were somehow, for some reason, left unsecured to Grand Park, and it has allowed these demonstrators to build up a fortified line here.
And it's going to start getting dark really soon. In the next hour or so, we're expecting our sunset around 8 o'clock tonight. So it makes you think. And right now, it looks like the law enforcement is in some sort of position right in front of those protesters that barricaded themselves. But it makes you think, is this going to continue until it gets dark? Is that when they're going to move in with the horses, or are they going to move in sooner? We have Gabe Santos, and I believe Gabe's going to give us a clearer picture of what he's seeing. Gabe, what's going on?
Yeah, so we've been monitoring this barricade, if you will, that's on Spring Street right next to City Hall, and we've been kind of keeping tabs on what LAPD is doing. Earlier, when there was another one of these makeshift barricades set up, LAPD moved in pretty quickly with those mounted units. This one, they appear to be kind of taking a little bit of their time dealing with, and you could see there are consequences, if you will, to that, because protesters are continuing to build up this barrier and fortify it, if you will, with now 2 layers of these pink benches. And as you can see, somebody there throwing something at officers there further up to the north, and you could see there people continue to use those pink chairs to fortify that barricade. But LAPD continues to slowly, very slowly, fire their less than lethal rounds and make a little bit of headway, at least moving down this street. Those boxes that we were seeing, those are more of those less than lethal rounds. We were hearing earlier that LAPD was actually running short on those rounds, and that's not as an entire department they were running short. It's that at the specific location, different teams were running short on some of that less than lethal ammo. So you had different additional parts of LAPD come in, and it took them a while due to traffic. Some of the freeways were shut down, but LAPD was able to bring in some additional boxes of that ammo, and you could see those boxes there. They have arrived at the scene here, and LAPD is now making use of that as they continue to slowly push some of those protesters south near this barricade that they have set up on the street in front of City Hall. So it'll be very interesting to see how LAPD kind of deals with this right now. We did see earlier those white SUVs. Those are from the Federal Protective Service. That's a agency within the Department of Homeland Security, and that is a part of the agency, and their sole responsibility is to protect federal government facilities and occupants of federal government facilities. So unsure exactly which facility they're going to, if they're going to the federal building itself and try and refortify some of the law enforcement crews around that area, or if they are just here in general to help LAPD and things of that nature. That would probably be less likely than just continuing to fortify specifically federal property. But it is interesting seeing them on scene here and them kind of driving around, because that definitely is something that is agitating some of the protesters here as they continue to see those federal officers move into the area. As we zoom back into this section, this barricade, which now spans the entire length of Spring Street, then continues to be fortified. And you see more and more protesters kind of continue to set themselves up behind this barricade, and we're just waiting to see what LAPD does if they continue to move forward on this barricade here and using some of those less than lethal rounds.
It is curious to me why they continue this volley of less than lethals. It doesn't appear to be doing anything. They continue to fortify their lines there. And as we heard earlier, there were calls going out, Gabe, that they are running low on these rounds of flashbangs and pepper balls. And we just see a continued volley of these officers on the front line. It looks like it's calmed down now. We haven't seen anything in the last couple seconds. But look at the side of the road. Every canister there is another empty canister of a less than lethal on one side of the road. These are hundreds here. Throughout the day, we have seen thousands, literally thousands of these munitions sent towards these demonstrators. So that's one side of the street we're seeing. The other side is full of them as well. But again, in this situation, if you are indeed running low on them, what it is accomplishing when you're firing them at benches and chairs that are stacked up in the middle of the road. So we will continue to monitor that. Right. Okay. I think we're shortly going to have to excuse Gabe to go refill with Air 7. We do have other eyes in the sky that we will continue to watch what's happening. But this is, I think, the largest gathering of people we have seen at this hour now outside Grand Park and LA City Hall. It's where we saw at 2 o'clock almost more than 5 hours ago, what was the second demonstration of this day outside City Hall. That was a large gathering, more than 1,000 people. The entire park there on the left and the street was completely filled with people. They appeared to walk around down the block and join the other gathering that was happening at the Federal Complex, which has been the site of unrest for the last 3 nights.
There were thousands of protesters out here. And right now, just looking at this crowd, you're right, this is the largest crowd that we have seen in the last hour. And if this is that barricaded, the chairs and the benches that we looked at about 15, 20 minutes ago, this has grown significantly. A little bit earlier, I think there were probably 2 or 3 rows of people behind those barricaded area. But now it has seemed to really grown. I'd say at least hundreds of people behind those those chairs and the bench.
We have
some kind of smoke.
We have a new post from President Trump, who continues to call the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, writing, "Governor Gavin Newsom and, quote, Mayor Bass should apologize to the people of Los Angeles for the absolutely horrible job that they have done. And this now includes the ongoing LA riots. These are not protesters. They are troublemakers and insurrectionists." That is a keynote that he's using that term. "Remember, no masks," he writes. And then 3 minutes later, he posted, "paid insurrectionists." Okay, so why is that so significant? We were talking about it a little earlier. Insurrectionists, in order to deploy U.S. military troops onto the streets of the United States against citizens of the United States, the president would have to invoke the Insurrection Act. This is hundreds of years old. What is an insurrection? It's obviously a movement against the government, against the United States itself. Could this be viewed, what's happening in our city, be viewed as an insurrection against the United States? If the president here is using that term, he's calling these people insurrectionists. Is that a movement? Is that a move by the president to employ U.S. military on the streets of our country?
And it makes you just wonder, like, okay, are the Marines the next step? Like he said that he wanted to deploy a little bit earlier, and when? How soon will we see those? Did he say 500 Marines? We'll be seeing 500 active duty Marines. And these are military members, they're active duty. They don't think about getting assigned to anywhere domestic. I mean, they're deploying these men and women all around the world, but deploying them to California for this reason, I'm sure it's something that they were not expecting either.
Right. It's a bit chilling, actually, when you think about the possibility of the U.S. military moving against United States citizens in the United States. Here is that photo of the governor with Jim McDonnell there, Sheriff Robert Luna, and other members of law enforcement gathered in Los Angeles just a short time ago. The governor posting to Twitter and citing joined LAPD, LASD, and state emergency officials in Los Angeles as we respond to protests provoked by chaos from Washington. We're here to keep the peace, not play into Trump's political games. And on the flip side of that, we hear from the President of the United States, who are calling those on the streets rioters and insurrectionists. Those are, this is, you can say what you will about the unrest and the violence. This is, it's hard to call this a riot. First of all, that we've seen some burning cars and we have seen violence, but LA knows riots. We have seen them, unfortunately, in our past. It's questionable whether whether this is a riot. Okay, that's fine. He calls it a riot, but to call these people insurrectionists, just I feel like
kind of
opens the door.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty chilling to think about what that could mean. And I was talking earlier with Tim Caputo about what. He had the burning cars behind him and what this looks like with the country and the world looking at what's happening in our country. And so we have Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass blaming today's unrest and the weekend's unrest on the Trump administration and their actions. On the flip side, I was asking, who looks bad when the country looks at this situation and sees our city on fire, or at least cars in our city on fire, and we go back to Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller's Twitter feed. He is reposting ones calling this Democrat management. So who looks bad? He's saying that the Democrats. Another post, let's check in on how the LAPD's management of the protests is going, and it's a car on fire. So again, the LAPD, Democratic leadership in the city, in the state, is being used as a focal point for those who are opposed to those in charge here, saying this falls on the Democrats, this falls on Governor Newsom, and this falls on LA Mayor Karen Bass.
Definitely not a good look, and I'm sure not what they were going for either, the message that a lot of them are trying to get across. Looking back outside, this is 101. So 101 is still blocked off. I don't recall if it's northbound or south. It's northbound.
This is southbound.
This is southbound that is still blocked. We can see the northbound side getting through, but southbound still blocked, and we have a number of those police vehicles there, and they haven't moved. It's been blocked for, I'd say, 3
hours.
Hours.
And the real danger here is that the northbound side to the left is open.
Right.
The people who are throwing these things off this overpass onto the vehicles below, thankfully, have not turned their ire to the cars that are moving by. That could change in an instant. It is abhorrent to see what they are doing. Looking at what the state of the 101 freeway is here, littered with scooters, a bicycle, debris, rock, cement that have been hurled off this overpass onto these vehicles below. But, as bad as this looks, it could get even worse with those cars driving by on the northbound side. So how long this is going to be allowed to continue? There are vehicles under the protection of the overpass that are not being hit. Where are those officers right now? Where are the CHP officers that drove these vehicles onto the freeway who have now left them here? I don't think they can access them. They would need some kind of police escort to clear these people from the surrounding overpasses, because they would find themselves under assault as their vehicles have been for hours now.
It's terrifying just thinking that looking at the damage on their cars, knowing that there could have been a police officer inside that unit when they threw that lime scooter, but luckily, and we just saw something else get thrown at that vehicle as well. Luckily, we think that those officers are not there.
Right.
So yeah, that's another question. Where are those officers? And when they come back to their cars, they really just have to be careful. They have to have some sort of escort. But Jory, that's a really good point. I wasn't even thinking about the northbound side and those drivers. They're fine right now. They're fine. But thinking if this escalates even more, I mean, their safety is at risk as well.
So CNN is reporting tonight that California Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis says there will likely be a lawsuit filed tomorrow challenging President Trump's decision to federalize those National Guard troops in Los Angeles. So the governor of California is moving for the president to rescind that order, and now the lieutenant governor says there will be a lawsuit filed tomorrow trying to undo that move by President Trump to federalize the California National Guard members. Again, from a PR perspective, who's coming out looking better here? The president says he wants law and order and is doing whatever he can to gain that, and says there are California National Guardsmen and women who are here who can do this. I'm federalizing them. I want peace. You have the governor and the lieutenant governor now fighting that order, obviously on grounds of legal challenges.
Right.
Both sides want peace, but in the eyes of the nation and the world, who comes out on top in that dispute?
Right. It's become a clash. Unfortunately, this has just become a clash of powers between not only the government and the federal level, but also protesters as well. So they're mixed in the middle of all of this.
Right. Okay. So as we sit on this shot, I wonder if our camera can pan back over to what's playing out just a short ways away in front of City Hall. That is where a group of protesters have stuck around. They are using chairs and benches and tables taken from Gloria Molina Grand Park, which for some reason were not secured to the ground, and they are now in the middle of the road outside City Hall, used as a barricade to protect themselves from an onslaught of less than lethal flashbangs and pepper balls that have been volleyed from the folks on the LAPD trying to break this up. We have not seen much movement here in the last hour in this situation, and it appears there's a line of mounted officers that remains there at that intersection just outside at the corner of City Hall there, and down the street you can see those barricades that are being used. And as soon as we clear the shot of these trees, you will see those pink benches stood up on their sides. We have flags of various South and Central American countries being waved here. And it seems we have arrived at an impasse.
And yeah, looking at this, it makes you think that I think we had a very similar setup just about 30 minutes ago. So it makes you think that half an hour passed by, and we are not seeing any progress really being made. Like, you're thinking, what are the police waiting for? Are they thinking that this is just going to play out? Are protesters going to get tired? But we have seen a very similar scene to this for not just that last half hour, but hours now. And we just have those the chairs and the benches barricaded there.
So Spring Street has been taken over. The steps of City Hall have now been lined with protesters. A short time ago, LA Mayor Karen Bass held a press conference just inside this building where these protesters were happening. Tim Caputo said you could hear the explosions happening outside. Let's listen into a little bit of what LA Mayor Karen Bass had to say a short time ago.
What we're seeing in LA is chaos caused by the administration. People should exercise their right to protest. That's their First Amendment right. But people should also exercise that right peacefully. We do not want to play into the administration's hands. We're working with officials, we're organizing resources, but what we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration. When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored caravans through our streets, you cause fear and you cause panic. And deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation But we need to be real about this. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. I want the people of Los Angeles to know that we stand with all Angelenos, no matter where you were born. The First Amendment right gives you the ability, again, to protest peacefully. But it does not give you the right to be violent, to create chaos, or to vandalize property. And that will not be tolerated. So I call on all Angelenos to continue expressing your right, your anger, your outrage, but to do it peacefully. And I just have to say that all of you were there Friday. Everybody knows what happened Friday. A workplace, several workplaces were targeted and raids took place. Now, in the beginning, the administration said they were just looking for dangerous felons, violent people. It's hard to say that that's what they found at a workplace or in a Home Depot parking lot. When this happens, it terrifies people. It sends a sense of fear and chaos in our city. And you well remember a few years ago in the last administration that kids were afraid to go to school. Parents were afraid to go to work. This impacts all of our city. You can't terrify the workforce, and then expect for people to get the jobs done. So if you think about a father that went into a factory and now his family doesn't know where he is, the detainees have not been allowed to speak to legal counsel. That is a marked departure from what has happened in the past. When you think of a mother that might be working in a household, taking care of children on another side of town, that impacts that family as well as her family. And so this is something that I think should not be happening in our city, and I join with the governor in appealing to the administration to rescind the order to federalize the National Guard and allow the National Guard to come back under the control of the governor.
And that was LA Mayor Karen Bass a short time ago saying this chaos has been provoked by President Trump and the Trump administration and their policies dealing with Los Angeles and immigration and immigrants in our city. As we were listening to the mayor, exactly what we were talking about played out. Some officers emerged from beneath that overpass, and they were met immediately by projectiles, rocks and bottles and other things being thrown off that overpass. And as we said, if they want to have any movement to get these vehicles out of there, that overpass is going to have to be cleared by law enforcement because these folks, something else large just got thrown. It looks like a pillow, but I do not think that was a pillow. Given the force of what is now sitting in the windshield of that vehicle. What is that?
It looks like some kind of maybe a bag with like maybe a bag of rocks or some kind of heavy thing in the bag. But yeah, we see
that could be. We saw folks gathering things on the ground for a long time. It could be they were filling up a bag, and perhaps here comes another scooter. I'm surprised this has been allowed to continue for as long as it has. You see the size of those rocks. Here goes another scooter.
They missed.
I mean, at this point, what does it matter? These things, the damage is so severe on these vehicles that are just beneath the roadway. But I'm curious to see whether someone with a hammer is getting these rocks because you see the size of the chunks of cement. And here we go. It looks like movement here. Okay, they have moved in now and broken up this barricade with benches and chairs, and the LAPD is moving now through with those mounted officers, and the demonstrators who were gathered here for more than an hour are now being pushed back Spring Street. This is south down Spring towards LAPD headquarters, ironically enough, and you can see the steps of City Hall to the left. The green of Molina Park is off to the right, and the smoke lingers in the air here as officers are working to clear this area.
But just the fact that they took those benches and those chairs from Gloria Molina Park, that's just insane. It's mind-blowing. And here we have the remnants of it, I believe. Now, it looks like law enforcement going in, putting those benches down. They'll be clearing that out of the road hopefully soon. But
let's go see what's happening a little further up the road and with those demonstrators, because those mounted officers are continuing to move in. Again, another stretch of roadway that's just being reclaimed by the LAPD.
Yeah.
Where will these demonstrators go next?
Exactly.
Has this run out of steam? It's been a long day. It's been a long weekend in Los Angeles. At what point does this end? Does this calm down and these folks go home? Is this going to continue into the night, as we've seen the last 2 nights and seen unrest, confrontation with law enforcement? And once again, we are at a showdown. Those LAPD officers are standing in the middle of Spring Street. This is the middle. This is the main crosswalk from the park over to City Hall. You see that brick walkway there in the middle, normally full of buses making their way through and a lot of people. But tonight, the only people that are making their way through are the police and these demonstrators in the middle of the road.
And right now, I'm curious to know if these demonstrators, they're going to go, I mean, is there even anything left at the park? Can they go to the park and grab more benches and chairs, or are they just going to stand there now? And now that they are pretty much defenseless, is this where it's going to start fizzling down and we see some more progress being made? It looks like we have a police car pulling up to something.
A little more movement, yeah.
Yeah.
As we watch what's playing here on Spring Street, I wonder if we can go a little bit to the left and see what's playing out at the Federal Complex. This is pretty close. So remember, this is the site of that large demonstration around 2 o'clock today. We'll show you how far it is from the rest of the activity. So this is the overpass. This is on Los Angeles Street, which looks like these vehicles are now being moved. The overpass has been cleared. This had to happen at some point. This was going on for way too long. Those vehicles were sustaining way too much damage. And we'll wait and see what kind of damage was done to the overpass itself. But
It looks like
fireworks,
something was shot.
yeah,
Oh,
more
okay.
explosives going off here. And we see a canister being kicked on the roadway here.
I also
Wow.
want
Did
to
you
know,
see-
what's going on?
So beneath, there is some movement here. Watch what these officers are doing on the 101 freeway. They're looking out for more people. Yeah, the volleying of projectiles continues. It looks like perhaps they were able to clear the overpass from below.
That's not a good spot for them to stand because these protesters are throwing fireworks directly at those officers.
Okay. Traffic continues to go by on the northbound side, and here you see somebody throw something, a firework down below, and then retreat back to the other side. I don't know what the fortifications are beneath this underpass, but these CHP vehicles have been here for hours. I assume that those officers that we're seeing now, that they have been beneath there this entire time.
Yeah.
We saw those who were arrested from the 101 and the on-ramp, and they were taken away. They weren't taken into downtown. They were taken down back onto the 101 freeway where those CHP vehicles were parked, and you assume driven off to detention from there. There remain some vehicles and the officers that occupy them beneath this overpass.
So they were hiding under that overpass. I'm more curious to know exactly how are they able to clear out the people that were on that overpass? Because we looked at it just about 10 minutes ago and it was packed.
Right.
We had so many protesters there, but so quickly they got rid of them. And I think that's when the police felt safe enough. They came out from under the overpass, but unfortunately they're getting fireworks thrown at them. But it looks like it has stopped. We have some more movement here.
Yeah, it looks like the airbags deployed in this from everything being thrown on top of it. So trying to get in here and access this, maybe just putting it into neutral. So
I'm surprised.
I think his legs,
Moving.
I don't think that officer is sitting there. I think they're kind of pushing on the gas pedal perhaps because that airbag is fully deployed. I think he's climbing under it. And you see him lifting it back up to emerge back from the vehicle. So maybe putting it in neutral so they can push these vehicles out of the way, struggling to get the airbag out of the way, and another canister thrown, a smoke canister thrown from up above down onto the surface. So we'll see if this officer is able to move this vehicle again under attack. An onslaught of projectiles being thrown down there. That is assault on a law enforcement officer right there, throwing directly a rock at that officer who was not in a vehicle, exposed at the time, and there I believe that is the person that was doing it.
It's all caught on camera. But where are the officers here that moved in on the protesters?
I'm not
Where
sure
are
they did. I'm not sure they did. I think the officers on the surface of the 101 might have fired tear gas up above because I don't
That
see.
makes sense why they dispersed so
exactly.
quickly.
I don't see any officers up on that level. Everything seems to be down, and here we just saw something thrown, and I don't think it made it to the southbound side. It might have fallen into oncoming traffic on the northbound side.
That's another concern. Yeah, the southbound drivers.
There you go. You can see something in the middle of the road that was just thrown. A couple things, cans perhaps, water, rocks, and here we go. So you see officers running because it's too dangerous to move slowly when they emerge from beneath this overpass. Just
Wow.
unbelievable scene of CHP officers sprinting for their own safety as other officers step out to cover them as projectiles continue to be thrown. And we'll see from this side whether anyone manages or dares to throw anything. But this officer now moving pretty quickly, knowing that they're likely to face, there you go, something thrown and hitting that vehicle. So how long this has been allowed to go on, it's been hours. You can see the amount and the size of the chunks of concrete that were thrown onto the roadway here. If that hit a person, it could easily kill them. Another firework thrown down there. So these 3 vehicles still abandoned by the CHP. 4 of them, we'll see if anyone is able to get back in there. The one furthest to the left has the airbags deployed. I don't know if that's drivable, if they can even move that tonight. But we see LAPD officers not too far away from here. They cleared those folks out from the middle of Spring Street while all this was playing out. Officers here from the CHP under siege from these demonstrators. And you talk about peaceful demonstrations. What we are seeing, that is not peaceful.
No.
The folks that are gathered on that overpass are violent. They are not peaceful protesters. And we are seeing their assault on law enforcement continue.
Yeah, we just saw it right in front of our eyes, exactly the assault on the police officers and those officers running for their lives. Right now, it looks like one demonstrator facing off against law enforcement, but they did clear those 2 scenes out fairly quickly, that barricaded area and also the overpass. And I'm curious how many other scenes we have, how many gatherings of groups we have. Right now, it looks like this is just one demonstrator, and officers seem to be firing something at this demonstrator. This demonstrator just seems to be walking.
Yeah, just challenging them to do something now. So their protection has been taken down. You can see one bench there, someone, I believe, lying down. Yep, maybe with a skateboard as protection. So these folks just kind of taunting those officers. It brings up the question that Tim Caputo was asking earlier, and quoting someone else, would these folks still be here if the LAPD had backed off at this point? But, you know, the violence kind of negates that question. As long as people are acting like this, the LAPD needs to stay here. And here we have officers on the back of this armored pickup truck.
Like a SWAT team, possibly.
That's sheriff.
Oh, it's LA sheriff. Okay.
Yeah, that's sheriff or CHP. I believe that's just sheriff. Yep, it says sheriff on the door. So those are LASD deputies in full, in tactical gear. I don't know if it's full tactical gear, but they have tactical equipment on. And looks like reinforcements are now moving in as LASD deputies are moving onto the scene here. Perhaps there was a call when those CHP officers came under attack, and that's why these guys are moving in. We'll see.
Maybe that's what it took. Like it definitely went a step ahead of what I'm sure a lot of them were expecting. Because we just saw those officers get attacked, running for their lives, and I think really you're right. That did spark them wanting to move in. And
so a crowd is once again gathering on the overpass. I believe this is still Los Angeles Street, and these demonstrators continue to volley concrete and bottles. There's a large chunk that just hit that vehicle once again. So where is this coming from? Where is all this concrete being removed from to be able to be thrown onto the roadway, and what kind of damage is that doing to the overpass infrastructure here in downtown Los Angeles? There is a lot of concrete on that roadway. Where did it come from? It had to come from somewhere, and you know chunks like that are not just sitting on the side of the road. So here they are scattering again. Perhaps a tear gas canister was deployed back up onto here, or maybe it's the sheriff's department moving in. There's still a couple blocks. They would have to be a couple blocks away from City Hall where we saw them gathering.
Yeah, it has to be either, there's some fireworks that I believe they threw, but possibly tear gas. That was a pretty large crowd. Again, we saw it clear out, but then that large crowd gathered again. Looks like it's clearing out, but I feel like it's just a matter of time before they come back. And I just don't understand, why are they throwing the concrete? The officers have left. There's 3 cars left. They're heavily damaged. it makes you just wonder why. Why are they continuing to throw concrete?
It is the destruction. It's likely the
Feels
destruction of young men.
Yeah.
You know, we see this after sporting events, the burning of couches, the ripping down of goalposts. You know, this is the kind of thing that people of a certain age just like to do. And I am generalizing somewhat. There could be some women, some females involved in this, and older people, but generally we see in a gathering like this, you start to get a mob mentality where some people are doing it and you just kind of lose your inhibitions as here goes another scooter down onto the roadway below. So the damage that is being caused to the infrastructure, to the vehicles of the CHP, to that overpass, to the scooters and the bikes that are provided for the public to use are now no longer available, and this will cost money to replace. Money that has been spent by our tax dollars to procure is now unavailable.
It makes you wonder, like, how much is the city going to have to spend now? This is thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage that was so unnecessary. And it looks like we have a little more, no, this is not movement. That's just the northbound side that's moving, which honestly, I'm so glad that the northbound side is still safe as of right now. Looks like at least the demonstrators have left it alone, but we are zooming back in into that police vehicle. Again, it has some sort of bag, and it looks like there is a flame on that police vehicle. I can't tell. Yeah.
Yep, that is now on fire. We'll see if it catches or if it burns out, if it fizzles out. We've already seen 5 vehicles go up in flames, those unmanned Waymos that were lit on fire. So is this an incendiary or is this to extinguish? It was an extinguisher. Okay, good. All right, so that fire, nope, that is still burning.
Wow.
You can see it right on the windshield. What was the windshield is now kind of caved into this vehicle, and that fire is still burning. I don't know if there's anything to catch on that. I guess it depends on how much ingress it has into the vehicle itself, but if a fire lands just on a vehicle that's off on the windshield and the hood, nothing should theoretically catch fire.
Yeah, and just seeing this damage, it just gives you a glimpse of how upset and just frustrated these protesters are, and it just makes you want to tell them, like, hey, LAPD is not ICE. You know, why are you doing this? LAPD is supposed to be there to protect you. They don't like that they're in this situation either. Why continue this chaos? But it just goes to show that mentality. They're upset.
Right, and just a couple blocks away, we saw another crowd gathered outside City Hall as these folks are regathering on this overpass and continuing to volley chunks of concrete, now incendiaries, scooters and bikes off of this overpass onto those CHP vehicles below. We believe there are still officers and other vehicles beneath this overpass, and we'll see how this plays out. We are expecting to hear from Loyola Law Professor Jessica Levinson. I don't know if she has joined us yet, but we are awaiting her to join us because there is quite a bit to talk about, constitutionally speaking, as you now have the governor of California at odds legally with the President of the United States. The President Trump federalized 2,000 members of the California National Guard, as we have said multiple times today, but we will explain it once again. This is not an uncommon thing for a president to federalize National Guards members. It has happened many times in our country's history. It hasn't happened many times even recently here in Los Angeles. Federal Guards troops were deployed to help out in the aftermath of the fires. They were deployed in 2020 with the civil unrest, with everything that happened during that eventful year. But that's initiated at the request of the governor. The governor is considered the commander-in-chief of every state's National Guard, and that did not happen here. We have the president usurping the authority of the governor to take over California National Guards members and deploy them onto the streets of that city. The governor of California is now disputing that, asking, demanding, requesting that the president rescind that order and return control to the governor and the state of California. We heard from CNN reporting that the lieutenant governor, Eleni Kounalakis, says that a lawsuit will be filed tomorrow to try and overturn that decision of President Trump to federalize those troops. This has not happened in our country's history, at least in recent memory that I can
Right.
think of since the civil rights era. We're talking since the 60s when there was pushback
Yeah.
against civil rights advancements. John F. Kennedy federalized the troops to help black students attend public school in states like Alabama and others, when George Wallace and the like were refusing to follow federal law and depriving U.S. citizens of their constitutional rights to attend school. That was the last time I believe that this has happened against the wishes of a governor, seeing their own National Guards members taken over. That is a little bit different than this. That was to enforce federal law that the governor was refusing to do.
Right.
In this situation, what is the justification to do this without the governor's request? So that has opened up
It's different, like a different part of history
yes,
that
a load
we're
of questions that we would love to pose to Jessica Levinson whenever she is able to join us. We are also awaiting at the top of the hour a law enforcement briefing with the LAPD. We expect to hear from Chief Jim McDonnell. We know LA County Sheriff Robert Luna is also involved in these discussions, and we saw some of his deputies as we see these demonstrators lighting a piece of cardboard on fire. They are intent on burning more cars tonight. We'll see if it happens here that one of them is a CHP cruiser that has been under attack for hours now. Folks throwing chunks of concrete, scooters, bikes, and more onto these vehicles below. It was a perfect shot landing on the hood of that vehicle. Again, here comes some fire retardant, a fire extinguisher to put that out. I don't know if it had much chance of lighting anything on fire, but
That's definitely coming from under the overpass then. So there are some police officers still there then. That shows they're still there.
Correct. And so we do also expect and hope to hear from the governor, who is in Los Angeles meeting with federal, local officials here, LAPD, LASD, and we believe that he will be speaking at this press briefing at the top of the hour. As we await that, as we await Professor Levinson, we continue to watch this chaos play out on the streets of Los Angeles. That includes the surface streets, which are the domain of Los Angeles, and the 101 freeway, which is the domain of the California Highway Patrol, which you can tell by these 3 CHP vehicles, which are now battered and dented after hours of projectiles being thrown at them.
And you can see an even larger crowd gathering now on, I believe that's still just the side of the overpass. The overpass still has a lot, but you can see more on the side, and they don't seem like they're going anywhere. It's getting late. We're getting close to sunset. Sunset's going to happen in the next 10 or 15 minutes. So unfortunately, it looks like this protest has made it into the evening hours when it starts getting dark. And then that raises more questions. What's going to happen when things get dark? Is that maybe where law enforcement draws the line and they say, okay, that's it. We need to stop this right now and then go a different route? Or are they going to continue what they're doing and like what we've been seeing, let things fizzle out, play out, and then move in with the horses, move in with those to those barricaded areas? It's interesting to see like what their move is, especially as it's getting dark.
Right, the LAPD Central Division throwing out a traffic advisory saying due to demonstrators throwing objects onto the southbound lanes of the 101 freeway and damaging multiple police vehicles, the 101 southbound freeway will remain closed until further notice. This will take a lot of time, not only to get the demonstrators out of this area, but to clean up the mess they've now left behind.
Right.
You have 3 California Highway Patrol vehicles that will likely need to be towed. They could get out under their own power. We'll see how damaged they are. Then you have, hundreds of pounds of concrete that have now accumulated after being thrown from this overpass onto the roadway. That's not something you can just easily.
Right. How do you clean that up?
Right. Are you going to kick it off to the side of the road? Do you need a street sweeper? Do you need crews coming through and gathering them in trash cans or a dump truck to do that? And so questions remain about how that is going to be handled. We do have, as we await the press conference at the top of the hour, we do have Professor Jessica Levinson joining us tonight. And boy, Professor, we have some questions to talk about with you tonight. I don't know if we have 8 minutes to the top of the hour. Let's try and fit as much in as we possibly can. First, what's on your mind as you watch what's playing out in Los Angeles tonight and the battle now between California Governor Gavin Newsom and the President of the United States?
So I think what's on my mind is what's on everybody's mind, which is what happens next? What happens overnight? What happens tomorrow? Will we see a significant escalation? If there is a significant escalation, or frankly, maybe any escalation, we could see the president say, I need to do more. We could see the president potentially, again, pull the cord and say, I need to invoke the Insurrection Act. As I'm sure you've been talking about, the Insurrection Act would give the president more authority to not just federalize the National Guard, but to say that the National Guard can actually act as domestic law enforcement, that the military on U.S. soil can search, can seize, can arrest. That's not something that we're accustomed to. So I'm looking to see, obviously, what's happening right now, but also how the situation evolves and how the president reacts.
And we have seen the president allude to the fact that and we're watching, sorry, Professor, there's a split screen here on the right side of your screen. We're seeing continued demonstrations, and a firebomb was just thrown down off of the 101 freeway overpass onto one of those CHP vehicles below, which is now burning. We'll see if they're able to put that out with the fire retardant from below. There's a fire extinguisher I believe they're deploying, but that looks like it's going to go. It looked like it was some kind of ball of fuel, whether it was alcohol or gas, lobbed off of this overpass, and that CHP vehicle is now on fire. So wow. We're having this conversation with these scenes playing out, Professor. We have heard the president twice within the last hour refer to the people, the demonstrators, and some of them violent and clearly breaking the law here, as insurrectionists. We have heard Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth threaten that the U.S. Marines will be deployed from Camp Pendleton onto the streets of Los Angeles if the violence continues. Is that allowed? Can the President of the United States legally, in a situation like this, deploy under the Insurrection Act, U.S. military to fight U.S. citizens on U.S. soil?
Okay, so in a situation like this is going to be the key. This is going to be where the fighting is. So let's talk really briefly about the federal statutes at issue here. We all know that the president can only act when there's something that gives him the power to act, or there's inherent constitutional power. In this case, what the president is pointing to is Title VII. This is not the Insurrection Act, Title X. Title X allows the president to federalize the National Guard and to allow them to act in a support role for federal law enforcement. They can help protect federal agents. They can help protect federal property, but they cannot act like law enforcement officials and, again, perform searches and seizures. They cannot act like ICE agents. But if things continue, you asked me about the Insurrection Act. Obviously, the president has been using certain language today. What happens next? The Insurrection Act is an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act. The Posse Comitatus Act says you can't use the military as direct domestic law enforcement. You can't have that happen, again, unless there are certain exigent or emergency circumstances. The Insurrection Act would present those emergency circumstances. So for me, the real legal question is, are we in a situation where the president can point to that broad grant of authority under the Insurrection Act and say, yes, we can move forward. Yeah. We cannot just have the National Guard, but have them perform those domestic law enforcement agency actions.
This is a president who has pushed the boundaries of constitutional law and law itself. What would happen if he decides these are insurrectionists, invokes the Insurrection Act, deploys U.S. military, and what is who can stop him? He's the president of the United States. If he does that, let's say Marines show up in Los Angeles, who's going to stop them?
So I think at that point you would have California having standing to sue. I'm not saying it's going to be a successful suit. I'm saying they would have standing to sue. The argument would be that the president is infringing on state sovereignty because he doesn't have the power under the Insurrection Act. That when you pull the cord on the Insurrection Act, that you should have cooperation from a governor. Now, there have been, let's discuss, and you may have already discussed, moments in our nation's history where the president has said, I'm sending in troops. That was really about implementing desegregation decisions during the civil rights era. We haven't seen the Insurrection Act, in my view, used in modern times against the will of a governor, which is a long answer to your question of what would happen. California would go to court and California would say the president doesn't have the power. And then we would be in another court battle. We would have a federal judge, likely a number of federal judges making that decision.
It is incredible that we are asking these questions in the United States, that this is even in the realm of possibility of something that can happen. But Professor Jessica Levinson, I would love to sit and talk with you more. Unfortunately, we're facing a time crunch here at the top of the hour. We're awaiting LAPD's press conference. So thank you so much. I would love to talk to you, and I hope we can talk to you about this, and hopefully not about some of the outcomes that we're talking about, our possibilities here. Jessica, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as we approach the top of the hour, we are going to kind of wrap up this portion of our coverage as we get ready for the LAPD press conference. We'll wait to see if California Governor Gavin Newsom will be taking part. He did post a picture of himself with the chief of police of the LAPD and the LA County Sheriff Robert Luna, that he is in Los Angeles. He is working with those jurisdictions to see what is going to play out and how to best address this situation. But we're going to switch over some crews here as we get ready. So we will continue to cover. You'll still see this Air 7 picture of what is happening in downtown Los Angeles. Things calming down except for that one pocket over the 101 freeway where we see demonstrators continue to hurl objects down at the CHP vehicles below. But stay with us. We are not going anywhere. We will bring you that LAPD press conference here in just about 1 minute as we continue our coverage here on Eyewitness News, streaming and online for Eyewitness News.
This is Eyewitness News with live breaking news.
Now at 8, violent clashes between more than 1,000 protesters and law enforcement officers in downtown Los Angeles. This on the third day of protests over federal immigration enforcement operations. Good evening, I'm Mark Brown. Tonight we have seen protesters shutting down the 101 freeway, setting fire to Waymo cars, throwing rocks, concrete, even electric scooters against law enforcement vehicles on the 101 freeway. We have seen several people pulled out of the crowd and arrested by police. The remnants of less than lethal tear gas and rubber bullets littering the streets of downtown. And beyond what we're seeing on the group, another battle playing out over the Trump administration's decision to deploy National Guard troops to quell these protests that the president is calling an insurrection. We want to begin right now. There's a news conference that is scheduled with the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, Jim McDonnell, that is scheduled to begin at 8. This is a key element of this because one of the things that the president has been indicating is that local leaders, local officials, we don't know if he includes the chief in that, he has spoken about elected elected officials, and especially the mayor and the governor, saying that they are not responding to the protests in order to quell them, and that is why he is calling in the National Guard. The chief of police of Los Angeles, Jim McDonnell, is going to speak to the news media and to the citizens of Los Angeles. We expect that to happen at any moment. In the meantime, this has been a momentous day here in Southern California, where these protests that began downtown at City Hall and at the Federal Building Complex, including the Hall of Administration and the Justice Department there and the courthouse, those two crowds merged later this afternoon and became a huge throng of more than 1,000 people and began marching around different areas of downtown Los Angeles, City Hall, and elsewhere. There has been violence directed at police and at members of ICE. What you're looking at now are live pictures from Air 7 as mounted LA police units are now moving some of those demonstrators out. It has been a pretty amazing day in Southern California, another crazy day of things happening. Let's go to Tim Caputo, who has been out in the middle of it for much of the afternoon. Tim, what are you seeing?
Well, Mark, you really nailed it on the head there. It has been a crazy day, and as the sun starts to go down, the concern, obviously, is things escalate from here. It's kind of interesting as you see the different layers. We kind of took a step back to get a broader vantage point, partially because the area we were on Los Angeles Street earlier was getting a little bit hairy. You could see down the 101 beneath us with all the overpasses and people on essentially every single overpass as police have moved in. Tommy, come to my right here to show these officers who have lined up on the street. We actually saw a number of sheriff's deputies come in on those big trucks with their tactical gear here to assist the LAPD as they try to move this crowd or get some sort of control out here this afternoon. Where we're standing is up on Hill Street. It gives you a vantage point of everything that's going on down below. If you look to my left here on the hill, this has grown throughout the day, and this is something that we've seen not just here a little bit farther away, but even down at Union Station as well. People are showing up. People are still coming out. People heard what's going on. People want to be part of what's going on. And so the crowd is not necessarily getting smaller. It may be dissipating in certain areas, but in a lot of ways it's getting bigger. The folks up here taking some photo, live streaming, being part of it from a distance. As you get a little bit closer, you could start to see and hear where the fireworks are going off. The police department, obviously, both LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, and CHP in a bit of a difficult spot because of the landscape here. You have the overpasses, you have the freeway underneath, and then you have the roads that go around the buildings, both Federal Building and City Hall, over on the south side of the 101. There is a lot of area to cover, and it seems as though from what we've seen both down below and up here, as they start to move a crowd and it seems to dissipate, people just work their way around. They come up the street, they go around the street. So getting control here is almost impossible. So what they're trying to do is get things quieter, but figure out how to finally get this crowd to go home. I can tell you, Mark, from being out here on Friday night, from being in Compton last night, that is a tall order.
Indeed. There are a lot of demonstrators that they still have to deal with. Let's get more from Gabe Santos. He's in Air 7. This is over the freeway bridge under which several CHP vehicles were abandoned after people started throwing scooters and concrete at those vehicles, damaging them, placing the lives of the officers inside them in danger. Let's get more from Gabe about how that situation is now.
Yeah, Mark, this is the situation above the 101 freeway. You have a couple of bridges here. That's the Alameda Street Bridge, and then over to the right is the Los Angeles Street Bridge. And on that bridge, you had a number of protesters throwing things down on the CHP vehicles below. Those CHP vehicles were parked there from, as you see a firework, or parts of a firework going through the shot. Those CHP vehicles were parked there a number of hours ago, about 2 or 3 hours ago, when protesters came onto the freeway and were blocking the southbound lanes of the 101 freeway. CHP moved in, they moved those protesters out, and they controlled that situation, but they left a number of those vehicles there onto the freeway. Eventually, some of those protesters on the overpass on the Los Angeles Street Bridge started chipping pieces of concrete away from the sidewalk and finding other things to throw down, like bird scooters and other electric bicycles, and they started throwing them down onto the CHP vehicles below. Earlier in our live streaming coverage, you saw that CHP vehicle right there was actually set on fire. It looks as if it may not be a total loss in terms of being completely inoperable, but it may no longer be drivable. You see those CHP units there under the overpass there, trying to figure out how to move that vehicle out of the way. The other vehicles, they appear to have been able to have moved those out of the way, and all of those protesters that were on the Los Angeles Street Bridge have now been cleared. LAPD has refocused their efforts, and you now have LA County Sheriff's Department here as well. We've seen Rescue 5, that's that very large Sea Stallion help.
Gabe, I need to stop you right now.
Yep.
LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell is about to speak. Let's hear him.
You good? All good? All right, thank you. Thank you. First of all, I know it's a very, very busy time. Thank you all for coming here tonight and allowing us the opportunity to be able to brief the public a little bit about what's going on and what we've been doing, and ask, truly an ask for peace throughout our city. I'm joined here by Gerald Woodyard, Deputy Chief from Operations West Bureau, Herman Hurtado, Commander from Professional Standards Bureau, and from Operations Central Bureau, Raul Jovel, who's also the incident commander for Central Bureau and for this incident. So I want to just take an opportunity to speak directly to the people of Los Angeles, clarify LAPD's roles and the events that have been playing out over these past couple of days. This includes our response to protests, our public safety responsibilities, and recent claims that you've seen made by some federal officials. Today I met with Governor Newsom, Mayor Bass, U.S. Attorney General of the Central District of California, Bill Aseli, and ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons. Let me begin by reaffirming a core principle. The LAPD supports and protects the First Amendment right to free speech. In recent days, many protests across the city have been peaceful, and we thank the community for expressing their views and their frustration in a responsible manner. However, when peaceful demonstrations devolve into acts of vandalism or violence, especially violence directed at innocent people, law enforcement officers, and others, we must respond firmly. An act of violence, whether toward officers, demonstrators, or the public, will be met with swift and lawful action. Our goal is to maintain order without escalating conflict and to protect everybody's right to safety. Recent public statements have misrepresented LAPD's action from an incident the other night. Specifically, there was a claim that LAPD delayed responding to a federal officer's request for assistance by more than 2 hours. When we heard that, I think anybody who's a police officer couldn't believe it, and certainly anyone with LAPD couldn't imagine how that would happen. Well, it didn't happen, and I just want to go into that just a little bit. LAPD was not given advance notice that the federal operations would occur in that area. As a result, we were not pre-positioned to respond immediately to unrest related to those actions. Once the call for assistance came in, LAPD responded within 38 minutes. And that sounds like a long time, but I'll tell you why that is. The response was impacted by traffic, crowd density in the area with unrest occurring, hazardous conditions caused by tear gas that was previously deployed by federal agents at that location. Many of our officers, because it was put together in a mobile field force configuration without advance notice, were not equipped with gas masks. But despite these challenges, we moved in quickly and as safely as possible. At no point did LAPD ignore or intentionally delay any request for help. I also want to be unequivocally clear. The Los Angeles Police Department does not participate in or coordinate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement on civil immigration enforcement. We've said this over and over again, and I can't stress it enough for the people in our community who have high levels of anxiety about this issue, that we want everybody to believe and be able to call the LAPD in time of need if they've been a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime. We need that. Otherwise, the system does not work. That has been our policy and remains our policy, and it went into effect in 1979. So 46 years ago, that's been the way we do business. On the other hand, however, when a law enforcement agency, any agency, requests emergency assistance to protect lives, we are obligated to respond, and we do. Public safety is our duty, and we will answer every legitimate call for help from anyone. We recognize that immigration enforcement operations can cause a deep fear and anxiety, particularly in immigrant communities. That's why we're committed to transparency, accountability, and treating every Angelino with respect, regardless of their immigration status. Our job is not to divide communities or politicize law enforcement. Our job is simply to keep everyone safe. I want to express my sincere appreciation to all of our officers and partner agencies for their dedication and professionalism during these very challenging times. Their commitment to upholding the law, even in the face of hostility, is a reflection of the values that we stand for. We're working together to keep everyone safe, our officers and the public alike, and this remains our top priority. We'll continue to support peaceful protests and enforce the law when criminal acts occur. The LAPD remains focused on its core mission to protect lives, safeguard constitutional rights, and serve every neighborhood in Los Angeles with integrity. Let me open it up now for any questions you might have or any points that we can clarify.
Chief, the governor made a very strong statement that he didn't believe the Trump administration needed to activate those National Guard troops and take control of those National Guard troops and send them to the area because he felt we had adequate safety protections as officers here. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, if I don't know what basis they used to make that decision, but if that was based on our what I delineated here about the perceived lack of response to a help call by an outside agency, that did not happen. We did respond with mobile field force configuration. And just to explain that, a mobile field force is a configuration of people or officers within the organization that we bring in from around the city. We declare a tactical alert so we can break them away from their primary duties of answering radio calls to be able to come in, form up. They're trained in this tactic into a configuration of 4 squads or a platoon that are led by a mobile field force leader. They then go 4 deep in the car and they drive into the impacted area, and that way they can safely go in a large group of officers and able to handle whatever they come across. If we were to send in a single unit or a couple of units into a riotous scene, certainly they'd be surrounded and the outcome would probably not be good. And so this is a configuration that has worked for us, developed here, worked for us for many years, but it doesn't happen instantaneously. So we have to call in units. We have to meet at a certain location. They get the information they need to operate in the environment, and then they go and they take care of business. And so that takes a little bit of time for us to be able to get in there in about 35 minutes is pretty much textbook. So while we'd love to be able to say we can get there in seconds or minutes, in the reality of a situation of civil unrest, we got to do it right. We got to do it safely for everybody involved.
Hold on. Go one at a time, please, and let's identify name and outlet.
Victor with Univision. Chief, we have seen 2 kinds of groups, at least from Friday, Saturday, and today that have been working. The community that is enraged and they're not happy with the actions of ICE, and then the community that loots and attacks and destroys our city. What would be your direct message to both groups? Yeah, to the people who are not happy with the fact that ICE is in the community doing what ICE does, I respect ICE for being a fellow law enforcement agency. They have their mission. They have their what they have to do. We don't engage in that activity, but again, we can't preclude them from doing that. They have every right to do that. I ask people in the community to trust the LAPD, that we're not there for that purpose, and that if they have something they need us to be able to address, we're there for them. As far as the big picture of what can I recommend they do or not do, that's something, it's a federal issue, and the federal authorities have the right to be able to do what they're doing. As far as people are worried about the violence that we're seeing, this violence that I've seen is disgusting. It's escalated now since the beginning of this incident. What we saw the first night was bad. What we've seen subsequent to that is getting increasingly worse and more violent. Tonight we had individuals out there shooting commercial-grade fireworks at our officers. That can kill you. And we have adapted our tactics to be able to have a chance to be able to take these people into custody and to be able to hold them accountable. We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers, to throw at cars, and throw at other people. We've seen people with hammers, and you've broadcasted, breaking the bollards behind the federal building and taking the rocks, if you will, or pieces of concrete, and throwing them at officers. We've had liquid of who knows what description thrown at officers. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers. And again, as I mentioned in my statement, I can't thank our folks enough and our partner agency police officials for going out there and taking care of the community and trying to be able to put themselves between the threat and the overall community. And they do this night in and night out. And in these past couple of nights, we've seen it at a level that I think disgusts every good person. Thank you, sir.
You just described some pretty violent and chaotic situations. What is your position on the National Guard being deployed? Do we need them here?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question because I would have said that, we could handle this. I believe that we would have gone through a number of steps before we'd have deployed the National Guard or requested deployment of the National Guard. We would normally go to 50% deployment to handle radio calls and do the business of policing, and everybody else would be focused on the initial problem. Beyond that, then we would request through the sheriff mutual aid, and that would bring in members of the 44 other police departments in LA County as well as the sheriff's office. And so that didn't occur in this case because it wasn't done through the sheriff or through up through the normal chain. It was done from the top down, from the president directing that happened, and then the National Guard was federalized. So they're working for the U.S. Army, not for the California State National Guard. Do we need them? Well, looking at it tonight, this thing has gotten out of control. I think before I could answer that, I'd have to know more about what their capabilities are, what their role is intended to be able to make that determination. But we have great cops in Southern California here that work together all the time. So we have tremendous capability here. To say that we would go to that right away, I'd say we wouldn't have been there yet. Looking at the violence tonight, I think we got to make a reassessment.
Laurel,
how has your department interacted with the National Guard, if at all, since they've been here?
I'd say very little, other than we had a conference call this afternoon. There aren't a whole lot of soldiers in place at this time. They're still incoming. But the people who are here, they're tremendous Americans here trying to do, they provide their service, doing the task that they're charged with. Our relationship has been tremendous overall with the National Guard. We worked right alongside them for 5 months during the Palisades fire. They were there every day in the beginning in large numbers, and then that narrowed down before they demobilized. But the relationship is overall tremendous. We're very, very good partners with them, and I hope they feel the same about us.
And when you look at the demonstrators who are people from the community who are upset about, the immigration rates, families being broken up, deportations happening, do you feel any sense of kinship with them or, about this situation, or do you see that there is need for more law enforcement and for more immigration enforcement in Los Angeles?
I think, the federal agents are enforcing federal immigration law, which is their right, and anybody can have their personal opinion on to what level that should be, who should they focus on, and those kind of things. I won't take a position on that because really that's not our focus, not our job. But when I look at the people who are out there doing the violence, that's not the people that we see during the day who are legitimately out there exercising their First Amendment rights and to be able to express their feelings about the immigration enforcement issue. These are people who are all hooded up. They've got a hoodie on. They've got face masks on. They're people who do this all the time, get away with whatever they can, go out there, from one civil unrest situation to another, using the same or similar tactics frequently, and they are connected. Some would call them anarchists or by any other variety of names, but they're people that we run across routinely, city to city, and this is what they do. So even more disgusting that many of the people who are doing this come in from other places just to hurt people and to cause havoc.
Chief, let's go next to Telemundo over here.
Okay.
Soy Navarro from Telemundo 52. Do you think that the presence of National Guard increased the level to this kind of situation? I mean, you said that it's disgusting. Do you think that if you control it with them, without them, it could be a different situation?
I don't know. That's a very interesting question. What was the catalyst for us seeing the second and third day of this becoming increasingly more violent? To be able to say it's because of the National Guard, I can't, because there aren't enough on the ground at this point to make a difference. I've seen civil unrest a number of times before, and generally the second and third days are more violent than the initial phase. And so this is not much different from that pattern, but certainly I think there's a number of things that cause people to come out. Much of it is they watch this and see it on TV, social media, whatever social media outlets they follow or asking them or telling them to come down and be part of this, and they do that. And they come out here, and many come out and just want to see what's going on. They're out there with their cameras, but they're putting themselves in harm's way and potentially setting themselves up for a criminal future. When you look at some of the things that are happening here, somebody could easily be killed. And if you're part of that, then you're going to be facing those charges as well. I talked to the DA just a couple of minutes ago, and the DA will file felony charges on individuals where it's appropriate, but won't be shy about doing that where it is appropriate. And also the potential for federal charges, given the type of environment we're in. And the federal authorities don't play. And so as we move forward, I think people will be surprised in some cases for what happens to their future.
Right, let's go 2 more questions. Anybody that hasn't asked already, go ahead. Thank you.
Lindsay from your KTLA. Given the amount of officers that are here in downtown LA, how does that affect response time to other parts of the city and the safety of people that are not down?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. A great question. It was, how does the deployment of so many officers downtown or in any one part of the city affect our ability to provide police services citywide? It greatly impacts our ability because it pulls officers who would normally deployed in communities around the city of Los Angeles into one area in order to be able to address the threat that we're facing. And so other areas, when we go on tactical alert, that means we only handle radio calls of significant importance, meaning a violent crime in progress, calls that have to be answered right away. So the other calls get put on a queue and may not get handled for some time to come, and they're important to everyone who is a victim of any kind of a crime. And so when we go to tactical alert, we don't do it lightly, but in this case we did it very quickly because we needed additional resources right away to be able to help quell the violence. And that situation, as you can see tonight, has only gotten worse.
Chief, given what you said about not being informed so you could pre-stage for the incident that started this thing, and you said, I believe, that you spoke with the ICE director as well as other city officials today. Is there any effort being made for ICE to share information about what their next move is?
Yeah, that's something that we did talk about, and there's no resolution to that. And the problem is that we are guided and bound by the California Values Act, which means that we can't participate in any way in civil immigration enforcement. So the federal partners have been reticent to provide information to us before something happens because of that reason. Part of that is they want to be respectful of the rules that we have to live by, but it also, on a normal situation, not that big a deal, but in a situation like we saw here in the past couple of days, it turns out to be a very big deal. So we're going to continue to work with the partners that I mentioned and many others as we go forward to try and be able to make things as safe for everybody as we can.
All right, Spectrum.
Chief, how many arrests so far?
You have that?
Yes, Captain Raul Javel, Operations Central Bureau, Incident Commander. At least, this is very fluid and preliminary, at least 10 people arrested so far. There's arrests being made as we speak. About 3 officers injured. Unfortunately, very fortunate on very minor injuries, or I wouldn't say not minor, but they're not significant enough to be transported to a local hospital. They were treated at the scene. But we're making more arrests as we speak, and we're trying to get into that posture where we're able to make arrests. Right now, really, our officers are really under attack. If you can see when the chief was talking about, we're trying to, first of all, ensure that our officers are safe and the public is safe. And then we'll move into, if we can arrest, we'll arrest, and then obviously protect the property and our vehicles and other things like that. But as of now, 10 arrests.
And if I could just jump on, and then 29 last night as well. And so as we move forward, we will step up our arrest posture in order to hold people accountable and do what we can to stop this violence.
We're going to go 2 more questions.
Really quick, yeah, she asked the question I have real quick, but how long can we expect for this situation to happen?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
How long do you think this situation is going to become?
Yeah, for me, again, that would be speculative to say how long that the members of ICE will be in town doing the enforcement actions they're doing. But by calling out the National Guard, oftentimes their deployment periods are in 30-day periods. And so, to me, it's going to be an extended period of time. I don't know how long that'll be. We're gearing up for that to be able to participate in a meaningful way as we move forward without exhausting our people beyond what they already are. We're a department that went through 5 months plus of the fires and dealing with the fallout from the fires. And as you can imagine, with a very limited sized department to begin with, that's a big stress on our deployment, but more so on our people and their families. So as we move forward, we'll do everything we can to focus on employee wellness and to be able to offer whatever services we can to address the needs of our folks.
Sure. We'll go one more back there because he hasn't asked yet, and so Carmen, go ahead, and then one more, and then we're gonna call it.
So just 2 questions. One, is there a chance of instituting a curfew? And 2, will you be going back and re-looking at any of these incidents that maybe there wasn't an opportunity to make an arrest at a time, but going back and trying to investigate who's responsible and potentially arresting after that?
No, thank you for the question. I spoke with the sheriff today, and we discussed the possibility of implementing a curfew. We don't rush into doing that, but if we need to do that, I'll go back with the sheriff and we'll look at the options as far as that goes. And as far as give me the second part of the question again.
For some of these incidents we watch unfold, a lot of people watch
I got you.
things just unfold in real time.
Yeah.
Thinking, are any of these people going to be held accountable for this,
Yeah.
for the cars on fire and things like that? Is there a chance of going back?
Absolutely. When you look at the numbers of arrests we've made, pale in comparison to what will be made. There are video accounts of what happened everywhere on social media, on individuals' cameras, iPhones. We will go after that. Very aggressively go after the all available video, analyze that video, and hold whoever we can accountable for the variety of different types of crimes that have been committed. And that's something we'll do with a number of different partners with levels of expertise that may be beyond what we have. No, thank you for that.
Matt Armstead from the LA Times. Can you tell me on what charges people were arrested yesterday and today?
Do you have the specifics? Yeah.
So yesterday, the 29 folks were for failure to disperse. They were all arrested today. So today, and so far, this is very preliminary because there's so much stuff going on. The stuff that we know is one person was arrested for throwing a Molotov cocktail at an officer, a significant incident, and then another individual for ramming a motorcycle into one of our line where the officers were and injured one of the officers. Everything else is still very fluid, and I won't have that for a while.
Was anyone arrested on the freeway or related to the freeway?
So CHP has made at least 17 arrests that I'm aware of in the freeway.
All right, thank you, everyone. Commander Hurtado will stick around to do comments in Spanish for anybody who's interested.
You've just heard from LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell discussing his department's response to the unrest and the protests that are taking place in and around downtown Los Angeles. Of note is that we're getting an indication now of the injuries that have happened. 3 police officers, 3 LAPD officers have been injured, none of them transported, and at least 10 people have been arrested so far this evening and today. One for throwing a Molotov cocktail at police officers, another for ramming a motorcycle motorcycle into a skirmish line of police officers. But again, the officers that were injured were not transported. Some 29 people arrested last night. CHP has arrested some 17 people. There are arrests being made, and he says there will be more in the future. With regard to the National Guard response, one reporter asking whether we need the National Guard at this stage of the game. He said, the chief said, the first 2 days, it didn't appear that way. I'm paraphrasing. There are normally a number of steps that are gone through before the National Guard is requested. He would have requested mutual aid from different departments, a cooperative effort with the LA County Sheriff's Department. Those things had not yet happened before the National Guard was called in. So he says, we wouldn't have been there yet. That's a direct quote. With regard to whether they're needed tonight, he says he's going to have to reassess and look at how things are going. We're seeing from Air 7 how things are going. You're looking at a parking lot pay booth there that has been set afire by some of the people there. More information coming from the chief shortly, but let's talk to our Gabe Santos in Air 7 about what he is seeing downtown. Gabe?
Yeah, Mark, we're seeing a continued escalation of the situation here as Dayside turns tonight. I'm just getting my bearings here with all the other helicopters up here. We have a number of media helicopters. We have law enforcement helicopters down below at a lower elevation. We have a little bit of a marine layer up above, just to give you an idea of everything we're keeping an eye on up here. We did see this line of mounted officers on horseback push north on Main Street, right next to the famous Olvera Street in the area here, a little bit to the east of Chinatown. There was a barricade set up, and we saw protesters bring a piece of a wrought iron fence and set it down in the middle of the street, and protesters were set up behind that fence. LAPD decided to push forward with rubber bullets and other non-lethal, less than lethal rounds, and continue pushing those protesters out of the way. And they actually just knocked the fence down, and the horses just kind of stepped over it and continued on past. Those protesters continued on towards Cesar Chavez Avenue, and they've kind of split up in all directions. And now we see LAPD kind of holding at this position. But it appears that they kind of moved forward so quickly that now there's protesters behind them. So you have a bit of a safety issue happening there now. Another wrought iron fence, it looks like, being ripped out of the ground. We've seen a number of situations like this where individuals are grabbing things and shaking them back and forth and being able to, you know, with a number of individuals, you could do almost anything, and they're kind of doing the unthinkable, things that are bolted to the ground. A number of people are just coming up and pulling fences, and we've seen traffic signs, wiggled back and forth to get them out of the concrete, and that's what we saw earlier over the 101 and Los Angeles Street. That's when a number of items were thrown from the overpass down at CHP cars. That situation has calmed down, but it just goes to show you there's still a number of hot spots here in addition to this one. And I want Rob to go back to that security post there. As LAPD kind of moved forward towards that barricade and pushed past, it appears they didn't really monitor what was going on in this parking lot here. Now you could see somebody has set fire to this pay booth in this parking lot, and with LA City Fire kind of nowhere in sight, they're at their fire stations. They're staying a little bit further away from the scene because of safety issues. Just as I say that, not LA City Fire, but LAPD with a fire extinguisher. They're just going to move forward with their fire extinguisher and put this thing out. So apparently they felt it safe enough with their riot gear. You see that officer there with his baton trying to push a protester back there. It appears that they've made the assessment that individuals in this parking lot appear to be pretty calm and pretty docile, in addition to a number of press in the area. It appears that a lot of those people down there that aren't law enforcement are in fact press. So law enforcement made the decision there to just come in with a fire extinguisher and put that little fire out that was in that parking booth. But it just goes to show you that there's still a number of hot spots here that LAPD is keeping an eye on. That's the intersection of Main and Alameda. Once LAPD pushed those protesters down past Olvera Street to Main and Cesar Chavez, just as I'm kind of wrapping my head around what we just saw a few minutes ago, we see another barricade being put up with a number of dumpsters there. So people aren't leaving the area. They're just kind of scattering and regrouping, and then we're continuing to see different little barricades get set up in different spots of town as LAPD kind of continues to push the protesters towards different areas here. We're seeing a little bit of a progression north into Chinatown, but we also have a large group, at least a few minutes ago, that I last had eyes on, that was south of City Hall at, I believe that was Main and I think it was Main and First Street, and we might be a little too far away with the buildings in a way here to get eyes on that group there, but there was a group of about 500 people down on that side. However, that group of protesters, they weren't really doing anything that LAPD deemed to be a threat, so LAPD is really putting their focus on the protesters on the north side that continue to set up barricades. They really don't want anybody to dig their heels in and set up barricades or anything of that sort, because the longer barricades get put in place, the more they get fortified by other pieces of trash and other pieces of metal that these individuals find, the harder it will be for LAPD to deal with it later on. Looks like that's the Spring Street Bridge that CHP now has been able to contain. And I think if we pan to the left, Rob, there, we'll be able to see the Los Angeles Street Bridge, and that's the bridge where a lot of protesters were throwing items down onto the freeway below. And you see that CHP vehicle on a tow truck. That CHP vehicle probably going to be a complete loss. It was actually set on fire earlier as people on the bridge above were lighting pieces of cardboard on fire and throwing them down to the vehicles below. So that CHP vehicle actually caught on fire a little bit before CHP officers were able to move in with a fire extinguisher and put it out. But while we were zoomed in there, you were able to see a lot of debris just spread across the lanes of the southbound 101 freeway. So it's going to be a big cleanup here.
All right, and Gabe Santos, thank you for that. As let's keep that picture up right there, the picture you have, because the chief in his press conference spoke about the difference between people who are out there expressing their First Amendment rights, expressing their disagreement and disapproval of the ICE raids of day laborers and others, versus the people who are out here doing damage. And he actually had physical descriptions of what some of those people look like, what they do, that some of them are from out of town, some of them are people who go literally from one position of civil unrest to another. And he described them, a lot of them, as having their faces covered, having hoods and covering their faces. And we did see that among the people who were putting up this barricade. So with regard to how we look at them and we can describe their actions, we don't know whether this is protest or simply anarchy for the sake of it. So we're going to try to draw a distinction, if possible, between those who are out here expressing their disapproval versus the people that are doing things like this, setting fires and barricading streets. So we're going to try to bore down into that particular aspect of what we're seeing. In the meantime, Jory Rand has been covering this for the better part of the afternoon and much of the evening, and has some more reporting for us now. Jory?
Mark, it's a frustrating scene to see play out here tonight. Those protesters, is it a demonstration of protest or is it unrest? And in some cases, as you mentioned, it might just be both. Someone who showed up for one now enjoying the other. It's frustrating to see this continue to play out and the LAPD just allow this to happen. They are overwhelmed, as the chief heard. As we heard from the chief, that this is still going on. And as Gabe mentioned, once they break up one grouping, it just spreads out to another spot. And so we're seeing this play out. We have that parking security booth on fire. And now we have obstructions in the middle of Main Street as this is being allowed to continue. And it would just, a lot of people want to see this end and these people taken into custody. Now, it has been a very eventful day in our city, likely one that we are going to talk about for a long time to come. Now, there are two very different aspects to what is happening this weekend in Los Angeles. Let's begin with what played out on the streets of LA. It was a very destructive day. Several clashes taking place outside the Federal Building. Once that crowd was broken up, demonstrators scattered and a large group made their way onto the 101 freeway. The CHP allowed them to remain there for about an hour. Traffic was stopped in both directions before officers finally moved in and slowly backed that group up and off of the roadway, making several arrests in the process. However, CHP vehicles were left exposed on the 101, and for hours we watched people on that overpass hurl everything from rocks and chunks of cinder block to concrete and electric scooters. They began lighting pieces of cardboard on fire and dropping them on them below. Even a bike was dropped onto a windshield, damaging the CHP vehicles. Now, the freeway takeover leading to some tense clashes between the protesters and officers. You can see one person being dragged away. This was in front of the federal building. That person had breached the line, had taken that officer's helmet. You saw him just put it back on there and dragged away. That person was on stilts, and he remained somehow behind. He made his way back behind police lines and was eventually handcuffed and arrested as they worked to take off those stilts from his legs. Multiple methods of non-contact force also used: tear gas, blank shot, rubber bullets from LAPD officers. We saw those protesters picking up barricades and benches and chairs from nearby Grand Park to shield themselves, setting up a barricade. This actually happened twice in two separate locations before LAPD officers on horseback moved in and cleared them out. And then there were the fires. Likely the visuals that this weekend's unrest will be remembered by. It's already being used by members of the Trump administration and right-wing media after 5 Waymo cars were set on fire. These are driverless electric vehicles. They have those dangerous lithium-ion batteries that pump toxic fumes into the air. The LAPD sending out an advisory to people to avoid this area, not only because of the demonstrations and what has ensued from them, but the air quality, the chemicals that were being launched into the air there, the danger of being in that situation. And so 5 vehicles were burned, literally melting to the ground on Los Angeles Street. And again, it's now a propaganda tool for those who want to go against the leadership of Los Angeles and California. We are seeing those images of those 5 cars on fire today being used, a literal flashpoint in this fight between state and federal authorities, Mark.
All right, Jory Rand, your coverage will continue. We thank you for being with us on this and continuing our coverage of this unrest in downtown Los Angeles. We have video from before this. What you're seeing on the right there, that's a fire that actually broke out while the chief of police was speaking, while Jim McDonnell was speaking to the news media about the department's response, about his agency's attempt to deal with what is unfolding in the city of LA. You could hear sirens behind him as he was speaking. Where he was speaking from, the office of the chief of police, not far at all from where many of these things are happening, just a matter of a couple of blocks away. And so what we're seeing here is, on the right, officers on horseback trying to remove someone, that person who has a backpack, who was not in an area where he should have been. You see them bringing him to the ground. They're going to search that backpack. We don't know if that person ended up being arrested, but we do know that some 10 people have been arrested thus far this evening by the LA Police Department, and some 17 people have been arrested by the Highway Patrol. LA Mayor Karen Bass speaking earlier today about where her disappointment lies with the federal government.
No, my disappointment is I've been talking to the federal government for days. I was hoping to prevent this situation from happening. I was trying to encourage the administration that if they deployed the National Guard in Los Angeles, it would create a sense of chaos. It's the last thing our city needs. Our city is still trying to recover from the wildfires. And you just think about how so many people were impacted by that. And that's an example of where the administration was helpful. And to go from that situation to where we are now is just really tragic. And I think it's so unfortunate. It's the last thing Los Angeles needs. I have no exact timeline. I cannot tell you that. That's part of the problem, right? We do not know. I have heard a variety of days and weeks. I certainly hope that this is over. The last thing this city needs is civil unrest. And the last thing this city needs is civil unrest that's provoked.
We are watching now pictures from Air 7 over downtown Los Angeles. And this statement from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth discussing the possibility of deploying U.S. Marines on American soil. That drew a small group of protesters to Camp Pendleton today. More than 4 dozen people held up signs at the main gate there with slogans such as, "We're on a slippery slope to fascism and your oath is to the Constitution." President Trump has already federalized and deployed National Guard members, California National Guard, to L.A. after those protests erupted over Friday's immigration raids. This despite strong objections from both the governor and the mayor. Patrick Saunders is an Air Force veteran. He organized the Camp Pendleton demonstration.
We want to show our support to the military members that work here. We want to kind of remind them of what their duty is to us, but additionally we want to make it very publicly known that we condemn any sort of action by the administration of using active duty or National Guard troops on U.S. citizens.
Meanwhile, U.S. Northern Command confirms 500 Marines from 29 Palms are prepared to deploy status should they be needed to augment and support the DOJ's protection of federal property and personnel efforts. That is a quote. We will keep an eye on that. In the meantime, we are watching people now milling about, moving from place to place in parts of downtown Los Angeles. This is a Chevron station that is near one of the points of conflict. People are going in there. We don't know what they're doing at that gas station, if there's any looting going on. Again, you see people with hoods on. You see some of the people that have been involved in some of the unrest here that are gathered there. We do not know what they're doing. I don't see people coming out with a lot of things in their arms. No. So that's a good sign, I guess, that it's not being looted, but it's troubling to see people in these circumstances gathering. And that is the area there where a wrought iron fence had been ripped off from an area right around the street and placed in the middle of the street and then fortified with dumpsters. This is another one of these makeshift barriers that people have been using to try to confront the police, and the police are moving in and moving those barriers out. There was a fire a short time ago right in front of that barrier. That has since gone out. Nearby, about half a block to your right, is where some people had set up caused a fire at a pay booth at a public parking lot. This is near Alvera Street. And that police officers actually moved in and put that fire out themselves and moved people out of the way. So the LAPD is responding, but as the chief himself said, at the moment, they are overwhelmed. There are more people causing trouble than there are officers to stop them at this point. And whether the National Guard is in fact needed tonight is something that he says will have to be assessed. In the meantime, ABC News reporter Matt Gutman was behind the police lines earlier today. He showed us the projectiles that were coming from both sides of these clashes.
Officers from the LAPD pushing everybody back and using a tremendous amount of non-lethal force. You can see those flashbang canisters, the sponges, 40 millimeter like this, that they fired at people just to continue to push them back. I don't think I've seen this much use of non-lethal in a very long time. We've also seen significant number of rocks, bottles, projectiles that are very dangerous being hurled at the LAPD on this side of the skirmish line. The size of the rocks and projectiles, I'm going to see if I can try to find another one for you, that were thrown were significant. This is a piece of concrete or road that was picked up and chucked. You can see some of the sharper end stones over here, much larger ones than that were Holder police. So this is something that I haven't seen quite some time in downtown LA. It was very intense.
So how are they getting those rocks to throw? Well, they're bringing hammers with them, some of them, and they're chipping away at the curb, chipping away at parts of the street or different places on brick buildings and getting those pieces of rock to throw at the police. And a word about those so-called less, or not so-called, they are less than lethal. They're designed to be less than lethal, less likely to be lethal weapons. They're meant not to penetrate the skin. They're meant to disperse the crowd, to cause pain but not permanent injury, but they can in fact be lethal. And there have been cases of people who've been hit in the head by these projectiles, because even if they don't penetrate, it's the equivalent of a very hard blow to the body, and that can in fact cause permanent damage. People have had eyes put out, people have been blinded, people have had facial bones broken and suffered internal injuries from those less than lethal weapons. They are not, however, bullets and are not intended to kill or maim, but they are definitely something that you do not want to be trifling with. As the LAPD is going through this, they are using up quite a bit of those munitions, as Matt Gutman was mentioning, and as we have been mentioning on our air, some of the officers at the scene were starting to run out of those, and they're having to be brought in from other areas of the city because so many of them were being deployed. In fact, you can hear at various times during our discussions and interviews with either police officials or with the mayor, you can hear flashbang grenades and less than lethal rounds being fired, along with fireworks, actually commercial grade fireworks that are being fired at the police by some of the people in the crowd. And as the police chief mentioned, those can kill. So there are acts of violence taking place here. The police department is responding. The National Guard has been called in. And now we are going to see how this plays out as this continues this evening. Governor Gavin Newsom posting tonight on X, I have formally requested the Trump administration rescind their unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return them to my command. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. This is a serious breach of state sovereignty, inflaming tensions while pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Rescind the order, return control to California. Those are the words of Governor Gavin Newsom. Let's go to Gabe Santos in Air 7 over that area we've been looking at, that Chevron station there. What are you seeing from your vantage point, Gabe?
Yeah, Mark, we've been focused on this this intersection here at Alameda and Main. This is the next kind of barricade that has been set up by individuals that appear to just kind of continue to be setting up a few of these barricades as LAPD continues to push the crowd more and more north. So this is just the latest one, as I see a few people kind of making a run for it there, but we've been focused on this gas station at the top of your screen because that's the reason why there's been a crowd around there is just because that's there was such a big crowd that was pushed further north, and I'm trying to monitor a few different things here to see why people are running. But the crowd had been further to the south on Main Street, south of Cesar Chavez Avenue, that intersection you're seeing right there, and LAPD continued to push that crowd further north. So now you're just seeing the crowd just kind of scatter in a lot of different directions. So a couple people went to the gas station. We didn't see any signs of looting or anything like that in that particular store right there. So that's definitely some good news. But the concern obviously is individuals that continue to make barricades such as this one there on the right side of your screen that's been, as you said, fortified with a couple of dumpsters and a wrought iron fence. We've seen an item set on fire there next to that fence, but it appears that fire may be out as of right now. So LAPD is trying to avoid situations like this, but they're also taking into account all of the resources that they are pouring into the area, and they have been pouring into the area, and they're trying to figure out a way to balance those resources. So they are not at this time making a push further north to knock down that barricade as they had been with previous barricades. They're just kind of holding the scene as it stands right now, maybe to have a little bit of a respite, have a little bit of a calm, regroup, and then figure out the next move. You see the Night Sun from the LAPD helicopter that is over the scene here. We've seen the Super Puma Rescue 5 helicopter. That's the big LA County Sheriff's helicopter here at the scene as well. They've been helping law enforcement keep an eye on things. That parking, that pay-to-park structure at the center of your screen was set on fire earlier, but LAPD actually moved in with a fire extinguisher, and they were able to put that fire out. We were talking about an individual, possibly with a flamethrower, that set fire to a couple of trees there on Main Street, just south of Cesar Chavez. We did see an individual that LAPD believes to be the individual with that flamethrower taken into custody. So that person has been arrested at this time, and LAPD is going to figure out what to charge that person with, obviously for having a flamethrower and using it on city streets. That will be very serious charges. And you can see here that's Main Street and Cesar Chavez, and that's where a large contingent of LAPD is staging at this time while they figure out their next move. I want to ask Rob to widen out the shot. Let's look to the south of City Hall, because that's where another group of protesters was located about 30 minutes ago, and we haven't been able to see them for a few minutes now because we've been focused on the group to the north. north, and there was about 500 people down there to the south. It appears that that crowd may have more or less dispersed at this time and maybe gone their separate ways on Spring and First Street, as you can see right there. So LAPD kind of breathing a sigh of relief as far as the south side of their the area that they're kind of watching right now. But you still have a multi-block area of downtown LA in and around City Hall, I should say, that LAPD is keeping an eye on. You have that scene at the center of your screen, which may become a crime scene, more or less, the lanes of the southbound 101 freeway, where people were throwing pieces of concrete and bicycles and bird scooters and signs from that Los Angeles Street overpass onto the street below. You see all of that debris there. You see a number of those highway patrol cars, and I think, yeah, those are all highway patrol cars down there. You see that they're parked under the overpass, and that's because the ones that weren't parked under the overpass were heavily damaged by items thrown by people on the bridge. And LAPD, the reason why they moved north to begin with was they had to clear that bridge to prevent further damage to those patrol cars down below. You see one of them on a flatbed tow truck. That is the car that was pretty much set on fire earlier, but CHP officers were able to get in there with a fire extinguisher and put out the majority of the fire before it was completely destroyed. But that's going to be a vehicle that's probably going to be a total loss. And you see all that debris there in lanes. That's going to take a while to clean up. And as I said, probably a little bit of a investigation to figure out what charges to file against the people who threw a piece of concrete down there onto the freeway. Those are the southbound lanes of the 101 as you approach the 5 freeway. So still a few prongs of action here that LAPD is keeping an eye on, but it appears, at least for the past 20 or 25 minutes, that we're entering a little bit of a moment of calm while LAPD kind of regroups and figure out what their next move is going to be.
Yeah, Gabe, it occurs to me as we're watching this, there are people driving through the area as if nothing was going on. I think a word of advice would be avoid downtown Los Angeles right now. Just stay out. Try to go around it, because you don't know what streets are going to be blocked at any point. You don't know where you might run into a barricade. You might run into a bunch of people who are up to no good. So just stay out of downtown if at all possible. All these vehicles that are trying to traverse the downtown area, I don't know if there are any games or any events happening in or near downtown at the various venues right now, so that might complicate matters as well, just adding to the congestion and traffic in the area. But stay out of downtown if you possibly can. Former Vice President Kamala Harris responding to today's event. She had a statement. She wrote in part, quote, "Los Angeles is my home, and like so many Americans, I am appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying that National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. In addition to the recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division. This administration's actions are not about public safety. They're about stoking fear of a community demanding dignity and due process. Protest is a powerful tool, essential in the fight for justice. And as the LAPD, the mayor, and governor have noted, demonstrations in defense of our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful. I continue to support the millions of Americans who are standing up to protect our most fundamental rights and freedoms." That from the former vice president and former presidential candidate, Kamala Harris. Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass leading the charge. They're blasting the Trump administration's decision to deploy the National Guard after 2 days of protests over federal immigration raids. But the war of words with the White House only escalating tonight. Eyewitness News reporter Jory Rand has been following this political firestorm, this fight. Joins us now live from our newsroom with more on that. Jory.
That fight only growing tonight, Mark. This is a situation our country really has never seen before. It's not unusual for the National Guard to be federalized. We have seen it in the past. Most recently, from what we can ascertain, it happened in the 1960s with John F. Kennedy federalizing the National Guard to allow black students into school, as the governor, namely George Wallace and other officials, were not allowing students into school, breaking federal laws. So the federal government had to come in, take over the troops there. In this situation, it is a little different in that the governor didn't want this to happen, didn't give his permission, and it wasn't because federal law wasn't being executed by the local government. It's because the leader of the federal government wanted to prove a point here and take over and use these these state troops under federal power. And so both the governor and the mayor are accusing President Trump of inflaming passions to provoke a response, saying he and his administration are the ones who want violence. Here's a look at some of those National Guard soldiers in Westwood today guarding the federal building there. We saw it in downtown as well. Governor Newsom today formally requesting that the Trump administration rescind their, what he calls, unlawful deployment of troops in LA County and return control of the National Guard to him. He says, we didn't have a problem until President Trump got involved. And in fact, we heard from CNN reporting that the Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, is saying tomorrow California will file a lawsuit to try and regain control of the California National Guard. But tonight, the president is doubling down on social media, claiming the protesters are paid insurrectionists, and that word is going to be very important moving forward. Take a listen.
You have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it. I think that you're going to see some very strong law and order.
So we spoke with law professor Jessica Levinson today, who says while federal deployment of the National Guard is legal, it typically comes after that state's governor makes the request.
The last time that National Guard troops were called up under federal control without the governor's request was 1965. So this is exceedingly rare and legal. But I think what's really important for people to know is unwarranted. There's no indication whatsoever in LA that National Guard troops are necessary to maintain order. The governor has said there's no need. The LAPD has said there's no need. And really all of this seems to be an unwarranted escalation. The president has the capacity, but he shouldn't use it. And it's been very rarely used previously.
So JFK administration, who the governor says wants to see violence play out as he could score political points, are accusing President Trump of inflaming passions. To provoke a response, saying he and his administration are the ones who want violence. Here's a look at some of those National Guard soldiers in Westwood today guarding the federal building there. We saw it in downtown as well. Governor Newsom today formally requesting that the Trump administration rescind their, what he calls, unlawful deployment of troops in LA County and return control of the National Guard to him. He says, we didn't have a problem until President Trump got involved. And in fact, we heard from CNN reporting that the Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, is saying tomorrow California will file a lawsuit to try and regain control of the California National Guard. But tonight, the president is doubling down on social media, claiming the protesters are paid insurrectionists, and that word is going to be very important moving forward. Take a listen.
You have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it. I think that you're going to see some very strong law and order.
So we spoke with law professor Jessica Levinson today, who says while federal deployment of the National Guard is legal, it typically comes after that state's governor makes the request.
The last time that National Guard troops were called up under federal control without the governor's request was 1965. So this is exceedingly rare and legal. But I think what's really important for people to know is unwarranted. There's no indication whatsoever in LA that National Guard troops are necessary to maintain order. The governor has said there's no need. The LAPD has said there's no need. And really all of this seems to be an unwarranted escalation. The president has the capacity, but he shouldn't use it. And it's been very rarely used previously.
So JFK did it in the early 60s, Lyndon Johnson doing it there again in 1965. Now, again, it's the use of the word insurrectionist that will be key here moving forward, because the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and the president have suggested that if the violence continues in Los Angeles, Marines from Camp Pendleton will be moved in to take over securing the city of Los Angeles. That would be U.S. troops on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens. That is largely forbidden. The only way that a president is able to do something like that is by invoking the Insurrection Act. That means that the president would have to claim that the country is under attack by an insurrection. Is that happening right now in Los Angeles? It would be a wild legal battle for the president to bring in U.S. troops to face U.S. citizens. And more tonight from Governor Newsom, specifically for residents of Los Angeles. The governor is here tonight. He's urging protesters to speak out, but to remain nonviolent, saying, quote, give them the spectacle they want. Do not give them the spectacle they want by turning violent, referring to the Trump administration, who the governor says wants to see violence play out as he could score political points as things devolve here in Los Angeles. We'll see how this plays out and expect to see some lawsuits filed tomorrow on behalf of the state of California against the president and his administration, Mark.
All right, indeed, Joy. And when you talk about troops being brought in to deal with violence such as this, it's a crowd control issue. And troops are trained in other things. They are trained to win wars. They are not necessarily focused, at least in training, in crowd control and using the tactics that police use in urban areas to control and deal with violent crowds. So that will be a significant element that we're going to have to watch for, of course. And we're seeing here another fire that has been set in the downtown LA area. Gabe Santos is over it. What do we have that's burning here?
Well, it looks like a cylinder of some kind. Metal pallets. They appear to have been piled up here at the intersection of Spring and First Street, and the LAPD is nearby, but they're not too close. They're kind of letting this be for now. Their efforts are still focused on the situation on the north side, and I'm looking up north of Cesar Chavez and Main Street, and I see another little fire burning there earlier where we were watching those individuals that set up that blockade. And you can kind of see as we pan over from south of City Hall, as we continue panning to the left, Rob, a little further down to the north of where that gas station is, you can see there this new, not a new fire, but it is definitely a fire that has been coaxed accordingly, and it looks like there's a lot of cardboard in that dumpster, and individuals have set that dumpster ablaze. So you now have two bonfires, if you will, illegal bonfires burning in streets here in downtown LA. And LAPD at this point has taken this time to regroup their forces and figure out which one they want to tackle at this time. But you have an individual with drums there, you have this dumpster ablaze, you have another little cylinder there on the ground also ablaze, and as these fires continue, LAPD is going to have to decide which one to tackle, because at least at this time, they don't have the resources in place to take one or the other, unless they really coordinate that and really focus on sending a skirmish line to the north and sending another skirmish line to the south. You're going to have these two separate kind of hot spots, these literal hot spots burning, this one on Main and Alameda, and the other one near the intersection of First and Spring Street. So still tensions rising high as individuals continue to set fires here in the downtown area.
All right, this one, a literal dumpster fire. The dumpster fire, of course, has become kind of a metaphor for a failure, a catastrophic failure amongst people who should know better. And so this is what we're seeing play out now in downtown Los Angeles. Of course, the fire that has really caught a lot of people's attention and has gone viral, really, the images were those Waymo cars that were set on fire during the protests. A number of them were kind of parked on the street. Remember, these are driverless vehicles, of course, so there was no person inside to kind of get them out or make a decision as to where they should go. They were sitting there, parked on the street, and as the protests and demonstrations were going on, someone set them on fire, and I believe it was 5 of them that actually burned to the ground. Bruce Thomas, our law enforcement expert, joining us now to talk about what we have seen thus far today and what we're seeing into tonight. And Bruce, I heard an interview with you earlier, and you were saying that what we could expect this evening was kind of what we're seeing here, is that there are going to be smaller groups of people who are really bent on destruction, who are going to go around causing as much mayhem as they can. That seems to be playing out.
Yeah, these are not the protesters we saw during the daytime who were, utilizing their First Amendment rights. Whoa. Yeah, it did get out of control with the overpass on Spring Street, with the CHP vehicles, with the Waymo vehicles, like you said, over in Olvera Street area. But what we're seeing now these are anarchists. These are not law-abiding citizens. These are people that want to cause problems, and they've come into L.A. to do so.
Wow. And as you're saying that, we're watching somebody who was doing backwards donuts in that intersection, a man driving through without a shirt on with this minivan. Not sure what his intentions were or what's going on there, but this guy's taken off at a high rate of speed. And there's people out in the streets right now. We don't know if he was angry at the protesters or part of the protest. We just don't know. But there's so many people out walking around the streets, law enforcement officers, other people that are out there, and he's putting all of them at risk now with whatever he's doing here. This is just more craziness. He was doing those backwards donuts in that intersection. Seemingly, it looked to me like he was trying to target somebody. They were throwing things at his vehicle, and it looked as though he was trying to circle around and try to get somebody. I don't know, but what we're seeing now is he has slowed down. I'm not sure exactly where this is. If we could get our locator up from Air 7 just to see what exactly this guy's. It's Olvera Street. It kind of looked like Olvera Street. Well, he's driving around Olvera Street. He's got no shirt on. He's driving that minivan. It just stopped. I don't know if it ran into a bollard there or what, but it just stopped. And now he's backing up.
Mark, I don't know if you could hear me.
Go ahead.
LAPD is aware of this individual, but I'm not sure if they really know what to do. I was going to say he appeared to be trapped in that area with those blockades, and now he's flying down Main Street back to where that blockade is at an extremely high rate of speed, slamming on the brakes now. This is Cesar Chavez and Main Street, and there's so many people just out walking around right now. I don't know if he's going to slow down before he gets to this barricade. You see some people running. We're a little bit blocked right now because we can't see what's going on the other side of that building. So I'm not sure if this guy in the vehicle stopped or if he continued on. Zoom back in, left, Rob. I think that's him right there. Yeah. Okay.
No.
Not him.
No.
So we just kind of saw this out of the corner of our eye, and I'm not sure if this guy is agitated by the protesters or was with the protesters. But then we saw him doing these backwards donuts, and then other individuals started throwing rocks at this vehicle as he continued doing those donuts at high speeds. Now you see a crowd racing to the east. Looks like maybe to the west. There he is now. There continuing to drive extremely erratically. I'm really worried that this person is going to drive so fast that he's going to run somebody over because there's just so many pedestrians running around, so many people with their phones out. This guy's already hit multiple things. You see the bumper damage almost hitting that vehicle head on, and people are continuing to throw rocks at him. This is Alameda and Cesar Chavez. I think that guy was trying to go up to the driver's door. More people throwing things at this vehicle. Again, we don't know the connection this vehicle has to this protest, if any, if he was just in the area and got upset, or if somebody may have hit the vehicle and that sparked him. But this appears to be an individual that is upset, is unstable, and is now driving at a high rate of speed around the Chinatown area and Olvera Street. We're going to continue to keep an eye on this one.
There he is right there. He has stopped. He has stopped occasionally. He was stopped by a bollard before. Out. He ran into a barricade of some sort. And he's not out yet. He did open the door. There was a lot of front-end damage to this minivan. We're going to watch this play out, but look at the speed. Even when he backs up, he's backing up fast. He's hitting the gas pedal hard. There are people out in front of him. Oh, my God.
Oh, okay. No. I thought he was going to hit the motorcycle.
It looked like he was aiming for him.
Yeah, yeah. This person is clearly upset and just driving erratically, not in any sort of mental state. That's going to be a part of Union Station, and I'm not sure if we're able to get Air 7 on the other side of that, but we may. Okay, that's the vehicle right there.
I want to bring in
and around. Yep.
I want to bring in Bruce Thomas because you're watching this too, and this just, if things weren't bad enough.
This may be in a closed area. This may be some kind of a. Those are the railroad tracks.
But this guy is definitely out of control beyond what normally you would think.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, he's putting a lot of people in danger here. We don't know his motive. All we know is that he's driving really fast. He appears at various times to have been aiming at people with this minivan. People have been throwing rocks and bricks and all kinds of things at him as he's gone through intersections. He was doing reverse donuts in an intersection and going very, very rapidly. He's going through these downtown streets now. It's kind of a maze, kind of a warren of streets, some of them one way, some of them very narrow. He's right by the railroad tracks here.
That's the tracks.
And it's frightening to see. It's just one of the many unsettling things we have been watching throughout this day and this evening when there have been protests of ICE raids.
Vignes and Botchet.
Vignes and Bochet down in downtown Los Angeles. This is kind of near I believe the men's central jail, the men's central jail down there that's used by LA County. And there he goes. Now, luckily, he's on a street. It's one of those back streets. It's small. And we don't know. We'll have to see if he's trying to make his way back toward the demonstrations to see what his motive may be.
Yeah, he's over by Canasaurus Plaza by Cesar Chavez. He's over in that complex there.
Mm-hmm. And
he's definitely out of control.
And as Gabe mentioned, the LAPD is aware of him. They know that he's doing this, and they're going to try to. I don't know if they're going to try to get him. Who's going to be available to do it? We talked about the resources that have been stretched so thin for the LAPD as they deal with the unrest that's happening in downtown LA. Who's available to chase this guy? I don't think anyone is, at least at the moment where we're seeing it. And do they want to? Do they want to chase him when he's running through these streets at such high rates of speed?
For safety's sake, Mark, they definitely would want to be involved in this. The problem is, I don't think they have the resources right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, again, if you're just joining us, Eyewitness News continuing our coverage of the demonstrations, the violence, the charges and countercharges by officials at the federal, state, and local level about the ICE raids and about the federal response, the local response, and what people are doing out in the streets. And in the middle of that, of our reporting of that, we are seeing this man behaving very erratically in this minivan. We're not sure if he's either targeting the protesters or if he's one of them, but it appears, at least, that he is in some way unhinged. He doesn't have a shirt on. He's driving this minivan at very high rates of speed. There's significant damage. There have been a few collisions with various inanimate objects, no people that we know of yet, no vehicles that we know of yet, but it's only, I think, by sheer luck that hasn't happened. As we see him now continuing, Gabe, can you give us an indication of what street he's on?
Yeah, Mark, this is Cesar Chavez. He appears to be northbound on Cesar Chavez on Gallardo Street, and we've seen situations to almost purposefully hit other drivers, and that's the really scary part here. We are actually switching out helicopters, so you're going to see my picture in the helicopter that I'm in get a little further away, and we have our other Air 7 on the scene as well, trying to locate this vehicle, but it is definitely a scary situation for anybody that's in the downtown area right now.
Right, in addition to everything else that's happening. And just to recap, there were planned demonstrations this afternoon beginning at 2 o'clock at LA City Hall. There was another demonstration happening this afternoon and into the early part of the evening at the federal complex, the federal building in downtown Los Angeles, just a few blocks away from LA City Hall. Those demonstrations merged this afternoon into about 1,000 people and growing as the day wore on. And that came amid word, of course, that the National Guard troops that were activated and federalized by the Trump administration, by the president, were moving into Los Angeles to, in his words, restore law and order. The LAPD has been dealing with this and responding. The LA County Sheriff's Department has been dealing with this and responding as well. We heard earlier from the chief of police, one of the things that was very important that he mentioned was that there were claims in the initial hours of the first evening of the demonstrations, when things were starting to get out of hand, that when ICE and federal agents were requesting help from the LAPD, that the LAPD did not respond or delayed responding for 2 hours. The chief saying adamantly and emphatically that was not the case, that the LAPD was not given advance notice of what ICE was doing, and so because of that did not have officers pre-deployed and pre-positioned so that they could respond in a crowd control capacity, and that officers took about 38 minutes to assemble and then head to the area where those federal agents were, and they were hampered by both the size of the crowd and by the fact that tear gas had already been deployed. Because officers hadn't gotten advance notice, they weren't equipped with some of the things that they would need for a crowd control or a riot sort of situation. So a lot of them didn't have gas masks, so they went in anyway, many of those officers being incapacitated or at least having their effectiveness deteriorated by the tear gas that had been deployed by the federal officers. But the chief saying emphatically the LAPD did not ignore the call for help on that night. Also saying that, here we go, looking at this driver here. This was playing out about 6 or 7 minutes ago. This guy going through, it really looks like he was targeting folks and trying to hit them with his vehicle. But we don't know. We do know that the crowd was very angry at him, judging by what we're seeing in response, all the projectiles being thrown at him. And then he took off. And he then went down the street. You see he's got no shirt on. He's throwing stuff out of the vehicle. I guess some of it looks like one of the windows got shattered by one of the bricks or rocks. And look at the speed with which he left that scene. Later on, we saw him just driving erratically, again, heading into Olvera Street, running into a traffic control bollard. Okay, is that the vehicle there on the left? That's it. All right. Do we know whether the guy is in there? Oh, yeah, there he's coming out. What's he got in the back? He's looking into the back of that minivan. We don't know. If we have a location, at least we can put this out on our air. And if someone is going to try to Savannah and First Street, in East First Street in downtown Los Angeles. Again, Savannah and East First Street in downtown LA. This is where that minivan driver has come to a stop. He's opened up the back and he's stepping away. Still, as far as we can tell, with no shirt on. There's no night sun here because there's no LAPD or law enforcement helicopter to light up the scene or the vehicle, but he did walk across the street. I don't know in which direction he is walking because we can't really orient ourselves in the dark. He's getting into a second vehicle. Getting into another vehicle is what we're being told. Oh, there he is. Oh, there they are. Officers now responding. These are sheriff's deputies. They're putting him in custody right now. There he goes. That is the end of that escapade. We don't know if anyone got hurt. We lost track of him for a while. We don't know if anybody got hit. We don't know if he hurt anyone or whether he was actually trying to hurt someone. It certainly did look at one point that he was swerving toward somebody on a bicycle and trying to hit them, but he did not, that we saw. Bruce, this is just an amazing thing that's unfolding here, given everything else that's going on.
Yeah, for this guy to be driving like that is just dangerous beyond. I'm glad to see that the sheriffs have been requested and are responding to LAPD's request for help. My only question would be, what took so long? Clearly, LAPD was overmatched. And when you declare mutual aid, you get the bigger agency, LA County Sheriffs, which in the scheme of things, they are actually in charge of a civil unrest situation like this. So I would ask why it took so long. And the other thing I haven't seen are some of the other agencies in Southern California responding to this.
Yeah, we're not seeing. That's an excellent point. It would be good to know. It's hard to tell at night too, because you can't always see the vehicles or see insignia on patches or things like that would indicate that someone's there. Sheriff's deputies, of course, pretty easy to make out with the sheriff's insignia on the side of the car and their khaki uniforms. So they're pretty easy to spot. But as far as other police departments or police agencies, we don't know of any that are also helping in this response to the unrest in downtown LA. This is the minivan that guy was driving. They've cleared it. There's thus far, I think there was one other deputy who went through and saw that there was no one else inside the vehicle, but they're going to check it for other things, perhaps weapons, contraband, or anything else that would indicate danger or perhaps have a clue to what his motive was. So in addition to all the unrest, in addition to all the things that are happening, fires being set, officers being attacked, all of that, in addition to that, we had this guy. Driving erratically through downtown LA, putting a lot of people at risk, including police, demonstrators, everyone, bystanders, and he is now under arrest thanks to the LA County Sheriff's Department. The LAPD having its hands full dealing with what has been happening throughout the day and into the night. Some 10 arrests thus far. We know that number is going to go up. They've been focusing, as the chief mentioned, on clearing intersections, clearing streets, getting people out of areas where they can cause damage or injure people. And the effort to arrest those people will be ongoing. They're going to focus on people who have been attacking police officers, attacking innocent people, and vandalizing buildings and vandalizing police vehicles as well. They're going to focus on that. They're going to, in particular, perhaps on the people who were throwing projectiles and bird scooters off of the bridge onto the 101 freeway and damaging those highway patrol vehicles and putting officers there at risk. And the people who've been blockading streets. They're going to do a lot of that so that you can expect, as they comb through the video that's going to be everywhere after this event has wound down. They're going to be combing through all of that, and they're going to find people. This is a tactic they've been using actually since 1992 and perhaps before that. In the LA riots of 1992, people were arrested a year later, some of them, for actions that were taken during that civil unrest period because they were caught on video, and video even more prevalent now. So you can expect a lot of people who think they got away with things tonight are going to find out that they have not. LA Mayor Karen Bass. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask, I don't know if Air 7 HD can pull in over by City Hall, but it appears that the Sheriff's Mobile Field Force is doing some sort of operation by City Hall, possibly pushing a crowd further away.
Okay.
I saw some of their trucks and some of them launching less lethal and flashbang.
Okay, let's take a look. What you're looking at here, these are highway patrol vehicles that are kind of securing that bridge over, I believe that's a bridge over the 101 freeway. Let's go get closer to City Hall if we can and see if what Bruce is mentioning is actually happening. That would be a mutual aid situation, and we're going to see if there is a skirmish line. We see that fire, the dumpster fire that is there. Maybe are they forming around that to try to move these people out? Let's tilt down a little bit with the camera and see what we're looking at. All right, well, we just saw that appears to be fireworks that are being launched in some way by people against the officers. I do not see a skirmish line here, but let's take a look and see if there are other indications of a mutual aid response by the LA County Sheriff's Department that would help to clear these intersections and get some of these people out that are up to no good out here setting fires and the like. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Bruce, thanks for the tip. We're going to look for it. In the meantime, we want to tell you what the mayor has been saying, speaking earlier today about the need for these protests to be peaceful.
First of all, I think protests need to be peaceful, period. And any time it deteriorates into violence, that is a problem, and it absolutely messes with the overall message. That's not peaceful, what was happening. It's not peaceful for people to be on the highways. It's not peaceful for people to throw rocks or bottles. That's not peaceful. And if you are going to entertain violence, if you are going to try to take over a freeway, then you are going to suffer the consequences of doing it. LAPD, the sheriff, and certainly not myself, are not shying away from statements like that.
The mayor adamant that law breaking will not be tolerated. The chief saying that earlier today as well, also saying that at the moment, at least as the evening was unfolding, that the department, at least in this area, was overwhelmed. And that's his word. So we're going to see whether the National Guard is going to have any effect on what's happening here. You're seeing that commercial grade fireworks that the chief talked about that are being deployed, or being not deployed, but fired. Some of that has been fired against his officers, and he spoke about the fact that that can actually kill you if it hits you. And so there is a lot going on that they are having to deal with. And the question of whether the National Guard is needed, the chief said, indicated that the first two nights, they hadn't gotten to the point where they would have called them, but tonight, he would have to reassess and decide or look at whether that was a necessary part of the mix. It's the numbers of people involved in this have dwindled quite a bit. There were several thousand outside City Hall that were marching around and then marching to the federal detention center in downtown LA, in the federal building. Several thousand people were there. Those numbers have dropped away to what must be a few hundred, perhaps, maybe less than that are going from one location to another, scattering around. As soon as police form a skirmish line and move them out, they go somewhere else. And what we're seeing now is some people setting fires, putting up barricades, trying to close down intersections. But the numbers of people causing trouble is about, I would say, Bruce, maybe starting to match the numbers of law enforcement people who are out there, and that may turn the tide in favor of the police. If at least if the numbers are dwindling, maybe they can get a handle on this. Bruce, you still with us? I think we've...
the numbers are kind of equaling out. They were overwhelmed earlier today and this afternoon, but I think now that you also have the sheriffs there, the manpower pool for law enforcement is greatly increased, and they can take back some of these streets. And maybe we will see a curfew later on. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a question that was asked during the press conference, whether a curfew would be implemented in L.A. The chief said that he had spoken with Sheriff Luna about the possibility of a curfew being implemented, but none has been implemented thus far. It would take an action by the L.A. County Supervisors and the L.A. City Council to implement a curfew, both city and or county-wide. And that certainly has been done in the past in situations where things have gotten out of hand. Just if you're out on the streets after 10 o'clock at night or whatever time it is, you are subject to arrest. And that certainly is a tool that allows law enforcement to put an end to scenes like we're seeing here, where this fire is being set in the middle of this intersection, a food truck driving by. And so, but what we're seeing, I guess, is with the numbers dwindling, as you mentioned, the law enforcement agencies that are responding are in a better position to get a handle on this. But we should note, the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department, both well below full strength. Officers are retiring and or leaving both departments faster than they can be replaced. And along with that, there are budget constraints that are causing a real strain on police resources and police availability. We've been doing stories about how the Sheriff's Department is suffering. Their people are being so overtaxed that they're actually, it's affecting their alertness. they're having to work so many hours and so many days and so many shifts that it is starting to affect them physically and mentally. And there's a real concern about both the LAPD officers, the rank and file, and the Sheriff's Department rank and file about how to, whether they can deal with too many more incidents such as these. And then you have the budgetary concerns, both the city and the county, both having to make severe budget cuts, caused in large part by the response to the fires that we had in January that really put a hole in the budgets of both governments. And you really have, there's not much room to deal with this sort of thing. They're going to deal with it, but it's going to affect other things much later on. That's a story for another night. In the meantime, ABC News reporter Matt Gutman, he was out there as well behind the police lines earlier today showing us the projectiles that were being fired and or launched by both sides in these clashes.
That line of officers from the LAPD pushing everybody back and using a tremendous amount of non-lethal force. You can see those flashbang canisters, the sponges, 40 millimeter like this, that they fired at people just to continue to push them back. I don't think I've seen this much use of non-lethal in a very long time. We've also seen significant number of rocks, bottles, projectiles that are very dangerous being hurled at the LAPD on this side of the skirmish line. The size of the rocks and projectiles, I'm going to see if I can try to find another one for you, that were thrown were significant. This is a piece of concrete or road that was picked up and chucked. You can see some of the sharper end stones over here, much larger ones than that were Holder police. So this is something that I haven't seen quite some time in downtown LA. It was very intense.
Indeed, and it's not something that you would expect to see in downtown LA, and we'll get to that in a second. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's comments threatening to deploy U.S. Marines on U.S. soil drew a small group of protesters. You see them there. This is at Camp Pendleton. More than 4 people there holding up signs at the main gate to Camp Pendleton with slogans such as, quote, "We're on a slippery slope to fascism," and "Your oath is to the Constitution." President Trump has already federalized and deployed those National Guard troops to L.A. after the protests erupted over the immigration raids on Friday. This coming despite strong objection from the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles. In fact, the Newsom administration is going to file a lawsuit perhaps as early as tomorrow to try to prevent that from happening. In the meantime, Patrick Saunders, he's an Air Force veteran. He organized this protest outside Camp Pendleton.
We want to show our support to the military members that work here. We want to kind of remind them of what their duty is to us, but additionally we want to make it very publicly known that we condemn any sort of action by the administration of using active duty or National Guard troops on U.S. citizens.
U.S. Northern Command confirms 500 Marines from 29 Palms are on what's called prepare to deploy status. That means they're ready to go, should they be needed, and, quote, to augment and support the DOD's protection of federal property and personnel efforts. And there's a live look now at downtown Los Angeles. Still spot fires here and there, still groups of people gathering, mainly at intersections, either blocking them, barricading them, or setting fires. There have been some continued skirmishes with police, and there was a guy in a minivan that started driving around erratically and nearly took some people out. He's under arrest. Some 10 other people, at least, that we know of as of earlier this evening are under arrest by the LAPD. 17 others arrested by the Highway Patrol. Both of those numbers are expected to go up as we continue to watch the law enforcement response to the unrest that is taking place in Los Angeles. I'm joined now by Jory Rand. You've been covering this all day, and you've kind of watched this evolve throughout the day. And what did you notice, and what struck you?
It seems that tensions are rising and falling as we go throughout the day, and it seems like there's a group of troublemakers who, when things are calming down, they start things back up again. We see things calm down, then we see 5 Waymo cars lit on fire. We see that start to calm down. We see a barricade situation with furniture grabbed from Grand Park. We see that calm down, and then we see protesters all over the city starting fires. This gentleman, that's something I've never seen before. Typically, when we see a gathering like this, you do see people start to treat this like a street takeover and start doing donuts. So when you first see that, you just think that person is part of it. They clearly were not, as they drew the attention of those gathered there and then took off through the city in what we have seen. But again, it is a group of people who have been allowed to do this. We saw the protesters who were on the overpass of the 101 freeway. Once the 101 was cleared and it looked like order had been restored, those people were allowed to stay on top of the 101 freeway, and they started pouring things on top of those CHP vehicles that were parked below, and that was allowed to continue for hours. Now,
that was a mistake, clearly, by law enforcement. You don't leave people, maybe they didn't have the resources. I shouldn't say it was a mistake, but it turned out it didn't work well.
It did not work out well, and you look at the numbers of the protesters out there, the numbers of law enforcement, and what happens if they decide to go in and make a move on these people. What's going to happen? Is that going to start a really violent confrontation with authorities? Is that going to start a panic where you start sending people running through a situation where you have a potential trampling of a crowd? It's a very tough situation for them to be in, and the fact that they left those vehicles exposed and the protesters in place on the overpass made it for a very disastrous situation.
It is a thin line between enforcement and provocation. It is a line that the LAPD and other local police agencies have trod, sometimes successfully, sometimes catastrophically badly, for decades, dating back to 1965.
And
Watts riots.
It's actually been impressive to see some of the restraint we've seen from these different jurisdictions, because they have been under siege all day with projectiles and bottles and rocks and fireworks and smoke canisters, and very little response from the LAPD. Very few arrests. We've talked about, 27 throughout the day from 2 different jurisdictions. There could easily have been hundreds of arrests given the behavior we have seen on the streets of Los Angeles.
What they're trying to do is get the streets cleared, restore order, as quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. They're having trouble doing that tonight because the crowd is dispersing and going from place to place. If, as Bruce Thomas mentioned, a retired law enforcement officer, if that mutual aid response is now in effect and taking effect, you'll see other agencies coming in and providing the manpower, providing the bodies, basically to go out and secure, take ground and hold it, as opposed to take ground and then having to move somewhere else and losing the ground that they've taken. So that's what's hopefully a helpful development in this as we watch live now what's happening in downtown LA. These are pictures from Air 7, Spring Street and 2nd Street. That vehicle there that's on the side of the road, I don't know if that has been vandalized and is immobile because of that, or whether someone is parking there and doing it deliberately. What we are seeing, the chief mentioned these people that go from place to place, and they cause mayhem, they cause problems, and they are dressed in hoodies, they're dressed in black, and they bring hammers and they chip at the concrete, and that's where they get their rocks from. I was going to mention that when we talked about what Matt Gutman was reporting about the rocks that were being thrown by police. If you're walking around downtown LA, there aren't rocks scattered around. These people are manufacturing these projectiles by bringing hammers and hammering at the concrete and the asphalt and taking what chips away and throwing it at police. We have Brian Mueller, who's a retired law enforcement officer here in Southern California. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you have seen how things have unfolded tonight. What is your take on how the different law enforcement agencies are responding and whether it's been effective?
They do a lot of training together. It does take some time to muster up enough personnel to be effective and not be overwhelmed. The crowds are obviously a lot larger than the number of officers that are available. Obviously, as you guys know, each agency has a different jurisdiction, and therefore it tends to change who is in command of a certain area. It's in the city, it's LAPD, it's parts of LA counties in the middle of the city, like Grand Park and a few of the county buildings, it's Sheriff's Department. And obviously, as we all saw, right next to that, the 101 freeway, which is the jurisdiction of CHP. So communication is always tough in these type of situations. There's only so many radio frequencies, and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of people trying to talk. But trying to make the maneuvers to gain control of the freeway. And then obviously we all saw it did take, in my opinion, too long, but maybe there was some other things going on, they couldn't release some personnel to secure the high ground. You always want to have a high ground, but the high ground is LA City's turf, if you will, and not the CHP. So that created a little bit of a problem. But it usually takes a few hours for everything to start working in order. What you do have is when you have trying to disperse crowds, you don't want a big crowd of people in one area unless you have enough people to keep them in there. You're going to start making some arrests. But when you scatter them, when you disperse them, they tend to create problems all over the place. So if you can keep them moving and not muster up in a certain area by your personnel, your law enforcement personnel being able to maneuver, you can keep them from getting in a big power base. But when you let them solidify in a certain area, they're going to start looking for environmental weapons or debris or dumpsters or whatever to start throwing things at static lines of police officers. So when you have the officers in a static line, then they become more vulnerable. But if they have a maneuver capability, it's better for the officers, and you're able to disperse crowds.
The different agencies in LA City and County have dealt with disturbances ranging in size from Laker parades that get out of hand all the way to the unrest of 1992 and the George Floyd unrest that took place and the rioting and the vandalism that took place there to what we're seeing tonight. There's different ranges, but over the years they've learned different things and different tactics with regard to crowd control. How equipped, just from a training standpoint, are the police, these two different agencies, or at least speak to your agency about crowd control? How much training do officers get? How much tactical experience would you expect some of these deputies to have? And how is that brought to bear?
Well, there's quite a bit of training that takes place. There's in the Police Post Academy Learning Domain 24 has to do with disturbances. That's the initial training. Deputy personnel get a lot of emergency response team training in the custodial environment. And then again, when they go to patrol school, get a little dose of it again. And then recurrent training in field operations, and especially when big events will be coming up, like, for example, the Olympics or World Cup or a presidential election or things that intel tells us that is likely to have some type of problem. Efforts will be made to focus on mobile field force, crowd control, use of force, non-lethal weapons, training so we're better prepared. Stations will make sure that their personnel, they have their helmets and their face shields that are in good working order, and have all their flex cuffs and mass booking procedures all dialed in, so everybody's tuned up, ready to go if a mobile field force has to get together and come together. Most police cars, deputies, policemen are one person in a car for the most part and handle things by themselves until situations like this come together where there's just too many. And because we are outnumbered, you have to come together in what we call a mobile field force, basically a well-choreographed drill team. A smaller group of people being able to intervene in a bigger group of people, incorporating a variety of formations, movements, strategies, tactics, declaring unlawful assembly, having arrest teams, staging areas, mobile bookings, and a variety of things. Cameras, recording them, securing county buildings, county courthouses, hospitals, critical things that are needed to run a government, run a city, and that are needed even after this protest goes away. And also protect themselves. You don't want to get too deep in a big mob of people and not have the wherewithal to extract yourself. Additionally, with you need to know what the commander's intent is. How do we want this thing to look like when we're done with this thing?
Right. And we talked earlier about the fine line between provocation and enforcement, between getting the job done of getting the people who are causing problems off the street, arresting them, moving the crowd out, versus inflaming a crowd. When LA erupted in 1965, I know you're far too young for that, but it was because a man named Marquette Fry was stopped by the CHP for a DUI. And a crowd gathered around the arresting officers, and one of them shoved a woman, and that became, the rumor mill said that they had shoved a pregnant woman to the ground, and that is how that riot actually began in 1965. Started at 113th and Avalon, I believe. And So there's they're out there to do the job, but you can you can cause a provocation as well. And when you're out there doing crowd control, how do you prevent that sort of a provocation from happening that might inflame the crowd further?
Well, I was only 3 at that time, but we're not there. We don't want to start the very riot we're trying to prevent. But there was obviously a lot of other tensions in the community back then, because just one shove of one person should not have sparked up a whole riot back in '65. So there's other things that are beyond what the officers were doing. But, it is a fine line. We're trying to allow people to exercise their First Amendment, peacefully protest, and that's the key word, peaceful. And to declare an unlawful assembly, they're either already breaking and destroying things, or violence is imminent. It's about to go off, and so the incident commander or whoever's on the front line there, who has the decision-making authority, can give the command to give an unlawful assembly. And then people fail to leave, then they could be arrested for that. Now, I heard earlier on some other channels, maybe it was yours, about the issue of people wearing masks. Why do they need a mask? It's not illegal to wear a mask, but it's illegal to wear a mask after you've committed a different crime, and that being the failure to disperse. And then you can be arrested and charged with 185 of the California Penal Code, which is wearing a mask in the commission of another type of crime.
Interesting. Okay, so that is something that's in your bag of tricks, as it were, when you're dealing with people who are being unruly or potentially causing harm to officers, throwing things at you, for example. That once that's happened.
Yes, that's true. And we're not trying to make arrests. Believe me, the officers would rather be doing their regular patrol and having their Starbucks somewhere. But when we come together, we'd rather have people leave and go away. But they don't. Mm-hmm. And so you have to make the choice of either we disappear and then they destroy the city and destroy property and people get injured who are unaware of something going on the street and they drive in the middle of it. And then people are going to go, where were the police? Where was the sheriff? Mm-hmm. So when we are there trying to keep the peace. It can be a focal point by people who are determined to create a confrontation. The police officers are not there to try to create a confrontation. The people want it, but they will always, in my experience, were more likely than not wanting a provocation. You'll notice that you tend to have a lot more cars going to areas where the protests are happening because they want to get involved. They want to see it. They want to get a little clip on their smartphone to put it on Instagram or something. Mm-hmm. And they create a problem also by showing up in an area that's clearly got some police activity going on there, and that makes it difficult for the officers. So it's tough. You end up putting up with a lot of abuse verbally, a lot of things thrown at you from different directions. I do know that some different tactics that different agencies use. Some officers, their protocols will stand there in a skirmish line and allow the mob of people to get really, really close to them. Mm-hmm. And that's very volatile. And a few protests deep in the mob of protesters will throw something over the top, and it may injure significantly the officers. And as we saw, particularly when SRT rolled out to the Fairfax district in May 30th of 2020, they were not peaceful. They were throwing chunks of concrete, and as you guys have reported on the news, a lot of fireworks. Those things will fly faster and farther than a lot of our less lethal projectiles, and they are explosive devices.
Yeah,
we've had some uniforms burned. We've had ears where people had hearing issues afterwards, had to get medical treatment for it. So it is a difficult position to be in to try and facilitate First Amendment peaceful protests. But like I said earlier, when they're creating havoc or destroying things and being violent, they are no longer peaceful. They have removed themselves from First Amendment protection. Mm-hmm. Or if violence is imminent, they can declare an unlawful assembly. And then if they fail to leave, arrest for that. And if they're wearing a mask, arrest them for also wearing a mask.
Right. Okay. Well, Brian Mueller, retired sheriff's deputy, we thank you for your insight. What we're looking at here is right near crypto.com arena. And we got word that a crowd was gathering there. We don't know if these are people who are being peaceful or if they're just watching and seeing what's going on, or they're just wandering around in the streets, or if there is something else to this. We're not seeing any sort of violent activity going on right now. You see people walking with flags. You see people walking down the street. I did see one thing being thrown, but it didn't appear to be targeting anybody. And so we're going to keep an eye on this situation. We began our, as we look at this, we began our 8 o'clock hour with a news conference by the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, Jim McDonnell. Here's a recap of what he had to say.
LAPD was not given advance notice that the federal operations would occur in that area. As a result, we were not pre-positioned to respond immediately to unrest related to those actions. Once the call for assistance came in, LAPD responded within 38 minutes. And that sounds like a long time, but I'll tell you why that is. The response was impacted by traffic, crowd density in the area with unrest occurring, hazardous conditions caused by tear gas that was previously deployed by federal agents at that location. Many of our officers, because it was put together in a mobile field force configuration without advance notice, were not equipped with gas masks. But despite these challenges, we moved in quickly and as safely as possible. At no point did LAPD ignore or intentionally delay any request for help. I also want to be unequivocally clear. The Los Angeles Police Department does not participate in or coordinate with Immigration and Customs Enforcement on civil immigration enforcement. We've said this over and over again, and I can't stress it enough for the people in our community who have high levels of anxiety about this issue, that we want everybody to believe and be able to call the LAPD in time of need if they've been a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime. We need that. Otherwise, the system does not work. That has been our policy and remains our policy, and it went into effect in 1979. So 46 years ago, that's been the way we do business. On the other hand, however, when a law enforcement agency, any agency, requests emergency assistance to protect lives, we are obligated to respond, and we do. Public safety is our duty, and we will answer every legitimate call for help from anyone. We recognize that immigration enforcement operations can cause a deep fear and anxiety, particularly in immigrant communities. That's why we're committed to transparency, accountability, and treating every Angelino with respect, regardless of their immigration status. Our job is not to divide communities or politicize law enforcement. Our job is simply to keep everyone safe.
It is an environment, though, in which law enforcement has, to some extent, been politicized. We have the Department of Justice and the people from Homeland Security saying that the local agencies are not doing their jobs. They'd accused the LA Police Department of not responding to a call for help from the ICE agents and other federal agents who were involved in what they're calling an immigration enforcement action in one part of the city. The chief emphatically saying that did not happen, that it took some time for officers to respond because they hadn't gotten advance notice that this would be happening, and that officers, in order to respond to that, need to be especially equipped and formed into action teams to do that, and that takes some time. The reports had been, or the information that had been put out, was that it took 2 hours for LAPD to respond. That was not the case. The chief saying it took 38 minutes from the time the call went out to the time officers got there, and they were delayed in part because tear gas had been deployed, and that the officers were not prepared to deal with tear gas because they had not been given advance notice. Still, they went in and assisted the federal agents in protecting them and keeping them separate from the crowd that was beginning to gather. Governor Gavin Newsom, meanwhile, posting on X tonight, and I'm quoting here, "Let's get this straight. 1, local law enforcement didn't need help. 2, Trump sent troops anyway to manufacture chaos and violence. 3, Trump succeeded. 4, now things are destabilized and we need to send in more law enforcement just to clean up Trump's mess." That is a direct quote from the governor from his tweet tonight. The war of words between Governor Newsom and President Trump escalating tonight. This is also a photo that we got from the governor's office, him meeting with Chief McDonnell and Sheriff Luna, This happening earlier today. We're not sure where this meeting took place. It looks like a situation room of some sort. And Governor Newsom tweeting this: joined LAPD, LA County Sheriff's Department, and state emergency officials in LA as we respond to protests provoked by chaos from Washington. We're here to keep the peace, not play into Trump's political games. Again, that is a direct quote from the governor. The president saying that there is chaos on the streets of LA, and he used the word insurrection to describe the people who are committing some acts of violence and setting fires. He's saying they're insurrectionists, and that is, as we have been pointing out tonight, not a randomly chosen word. That is an important word because the auspices under which the president can perhaps invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 would require that an insurrection be undertaken against the United States and against its government so that the president could then deploy troops to put down that insurrection. And thence the threat from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth that Marines from Camp Pendleton could be deployed to the streets of Los Angeles. Marines, U.S. Marines, deployed against or to contain U.S. citizens and be involved in enforcement action against American citizens. LA Mayor Karen Bass speaking earlier today about the history and the challenges of dealing with large crowds in this city.
Because our city has always had a very robust immigrant rights movement and infrastructure and institutions that have been around for several decades, there is a history of having peaceful protests here. Now, you know, like any crowd, if we're talking about after an athletic event, everybody celebrates. There's always a handful of people that tend to be at the end and tend to hang around and might get into mischief and violence. But that's not the people who are putting on the protests. I tell you that to say that when those protests have been organized, they've been organized in a proper way. The problem is what happens at the end, and that's one thing that is difficult with crowd control, whether it is a political protest or whether it is a football game.
That is the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, who we'll be speaking to on ABC 7 in just a matter of a few minutes. In the meantime, we're going to take a look and continue to take a look at what is going on downtown right now at outside Crypto.com Arena and LA Live. This is South Figueroa at Olympic. Worth noting, the crowd that we are seeing are people walking down the middle of the street. We are not seeing any acts of violence. Doesn't mean it's not happening. We haven't seen it. And we're not seeing any fires being set. What we are seeing are people waving flags of various flags, Mexican flags, American flags, Palestinian flags, and from flags of various countries that they are carrying. But what we're not seeing is any sorts of acts of violence or unrest. This is right near Crypto.com Arena. That's it on the left, LA Live, part of that complex. And we don't know if law enforcement officers are being deployed there. This is in downtown Los Angeles. As you can see, the gleaming structures, these skyscrapers in downtown Los Angeles, amid what has been a pretty difficult day in this city in terms of the things that we have seen and the things that we are having to witness and deal with once again in the city of Los Angeles. Raids by ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, targeting immigrants who do not have their correct authorization to be in the United States. They are saying that they are going after criminals and people who prey on others. Demonstrators in this crowd today and elsewhere and at other times are saying that, in fact, the government is going after day laborers and people on their way to work, on their way to school, and, in fact, going after people who are in the federal building itself, in the system, at the agency, trying to get their situation straight, and they're ended up being arrested during that process while they're actually preparing for an immigration hearing. So there's a lot of emotion surrounding this, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of fear in the immigrant community in Los Angeles. What we're seeing now, it looks like a contingent of officers. The agency, I'm not sure yet. I'm guessing, I'm betting it's LAPD. And they are heading, right now this is Temple and Alameda. We don't know if they're relieving other officers or if they're heading toward Crypto.com. or what, but there is a citywide tactical alert. No police officers are being allowed. Once their shift ends, nobody's going home. And they're all staying on, and that keeps the manpower in place to both deal with this situation in downtown LA and also with whatever else is happening within the city. There are other things happening. Homes are being broken into. People are still being robbed. All kinds of disturbances are happening that have nothing to do with what we're seeing here that the LA Police Department has to deal with as a police agency in Los Angeles. Skirmish line forming. This is Alameda and Aliso in downtown Los Angeles. More officers being deployed there. We're seeing resources being brought to bear. We don't know what the target is of this skirmish line, but we're going to try to find out. In the meantime, we want to show you some video from earlier that has become pretty much iconic and has gone viral. And that is this. This was downtown. This was earlier in the afternoon towards the evening when the demonstration near the federal building complex began to turn violent, in which people were setting Waymo cars on fire. These cars were parked on the street and just sitting there, and someone set them on fire. And the mayor pointed out that there are people there that are protesting, and then there are people who are bent on committing acts of violence and vandalism and arson. And she was very clear that those who are doing the latter will be dealt with the full force of the law. The LA County DA indicating the same thing. The chief of police, all the different law enforcement agencies and their representatives are saying exactly that whoever set these fires, they're going to find you, and they're going to bring the full extent of the law to bear to put you in a place of accountability where you will pay for what has been done. There's a lot of video that's being put out there. There's a lot of video on social media. The cameras are ubiquitous, and it is very likely that whoever set these crimes was, in fact, caught on video, whoever set these fires, and there is an effort underway, or that will be underway shortly, to bring that person to justice. And then, speaking of somebody who was brought to justice, the guy here in this minivan. This is at an intersection where people had gathered, and you see him going in circles backwards, and people throwing rocks at him, at the vehicle. We don't know which started first. Was he driving erratically? Because when our camera got onto him, it was kind of just starting there, but we don't know whether they were throwing rocks at him first or whether he started driving erratically first, but the erratic driving, we know, continued after that. This is a guy that had no shirt on and appeared to be very agitated because he took off at a high rate of speed, as you see here, with all the people on the streets, law enforcement officers, civilians, everybody that is out there tonight. This was an incredibly dangerous thing for him to do. A very high rate of speed, driving around. He went to Alvera Street, got into a collision there, was backing up, driving erratically again. There were several minor collisions with inanimate objects. The vehicle was able to keep going. He eventually came to a stop, and the sheriff's department, on a mutual aid situation, came in, and 2 deputies arrested him quickly and without further incident. And as far as we know, nobody was hurt. But as you can see from that video, it was a very near thing. People very nearly got hurt, or someone could have actually been killed. Let's look live now. This is Alameda and Cesar Chavez Avenue. I don't know what that object is in the middle of the street or what people are doing here. Those are some cones. People are kind of grabbing up what they can and setting them. For some reason, they want to set them in the middle of intersections, and sometimes they set them on fire. Now you see LAPD setting up a skirmish line to try to clear this intersection. This is Alameda Street and Cesar Chavez Avenue. This is in Chinatown, and not far from a place where ICE had been staging on Thursday night. You may recall, it seems like months ago, just a couple of days ago, ICE officers, federal officers, staged in a parking lot in Chinatown, and as word got out that they were there, people started to show up and were surrounding them, and they were on the sidewalk, and they were protesting. They were demonstrating against them. They were yelling at the officers. There were some bottles thrown. There were some objects thrown. But for the most part, first of all, the crowd was small, and it was almost completely peaceful with 1 or 2 exceptions. The ICE officers put out a call. Look at that. That's the fireworks we've been talking about that have been thrown at police and at law enforcement. ICE officers put out a call for help because they felt that they were going to be overwhelmed by the people who were around. And that was when the LAPD responded, not in time, not as quickly as the federal agents would have wanted, but they got there and they dealt with the situation, and people ended up being cleared from a sidewalk. We have our Jory Rand, who has been here with ABC7 covering what has been happening for most of the day here, and he joins us now with another report. Jory?
Yeah, we continue to see unrest here, and this is something that the federal government and President Trump in particular is pointing to in why he has brought in members of the California National Guard under his control. Tonight, the governor of the state of California is now in direct confrontation with the President of the United States. The back and forth continues on social media. Last night, the president federalized 2,000 members of the California National Guard. That is significant for several reasons. One, because the governor did not request that to happen. It's typically how this would play out. The governor asks the federal government responds. Here it was the other way around. President Trump moved in against the wishes of the governor. Today, Gavin Newsom formally requesting that the Trump administration rescind their order, saying he wants control returned to him. The president, though, today said he will continue to try and maintain order.
You have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it. I think that you're going to see some very strong law and order.
So this is not typical. In fact, we haven't seen a situation similar to this play out in the United States in about 60 years.
The last time that National Guard troops were called up under federal control without the governor's request was 1965. So this is exceedingly rare and legal, but I think what's really important for people to know is unwarranted. There's no indication whatsoever in LA that National Guard troops are necessary to maintain order. The governor has said there's no need. The LAPD has said there's no need. And really all of this seems to be an unwarranted escalation. The president has the capacity, but he shouldn't use it. And it's been very rarely used previously.
Now, even more rare from what we have seen play out here would be the implementation of federal troops. Not California National Guard, not National Guard from any state, but actual military members being deployed to the city of Los Angeles. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and the president himself have threatened that this is a distinct possibility, using Marines from Camp Pendleton to be deployed to the streets of Los Angeles. Now, normally, this would not be something the president has the authority to do. You cannot put U.S. troops on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens. However, there is a clause. The Insurrection Act, more than 200 years ago, gave the president the authority to use U.S. military in that situation against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. But the caveat, of course, there needs to be an insurrection against the U.S. government happening. At least twice today, the president of the United States has called the demonstrators on the streets of L.A. insurrectionists, perhaps setting the ground to bring in those military members, the Marines from Camp Pendleton. So far, that has not happened. We also learned from CNN reporting that the state's Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis, says that tomorrow a lawsuit will be filed to go against Trump's order to nationalize the California National Guard. So we have legal battles brewing on several fronts, and we will see how this plays out, continuing on the streets of LA, but continuing tomorrow in a courtroom, at least on one legal front, and we'll see what happens, Mark, with the military, whether the Insurrection Act will be invoked. Coming up at 11 o'clock, we'll hear from another legal professor on the implications and the possibilities of that happening here in L.A.
Indeed. Jory Rand, thank you. Battles both legal and rhetorical as we look at video of actual dumpster fires. Leaders in Congress trying to get some more answers about people that are being detained by ICE. 3 members of Congress stopped by the ICE detention center in Adelanto this morning alongside families and attorneys of people being detained, but they were not allowed inside. Take a listen.
Let us in! Let us in! The moment that we came here, they locked up the facilities. We are all here to find out what has happened to the immigrants who were unlawfully arrested on Friday night without warrants. We are exercising our rights as Congress members to visit these facilities, inspect them, and do our oversight.
This lack of due process that is going on right now in our country is something that should concern every citizen. We think these individuals are being held here in inhumane conditions, which is why they're not letting us in. They're rounding people up. They're shipping them to different facilities. We talked to a gentleman earlier today who's been on the search for his nephew for 3 days.
We just want access. We got to amplify and continue to make sure that everyone understands what's going on is not normal and is likely illegal, but I wouldn't know that unless they let me in. We want to talk to who's in charge. We want to figure out what's going on, how many people are here, what brought them here, and under what rights are they being detained.
And it's worth noting, as members of Congress, they have the right to enter any federal facility to inspect it. And so they are not allowed to be denied access to that facility. These members of Congress say they're demanding due process for detainees. They also spoke on the phone with California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Bonta says he's looking into the Trump administration's use of National Guard troops without the approval of the governor. That's something we have been talking about and reporting about throughout the evening. As we look live right now, let's take a look again at there are so many scenes in downtown Los Angeles. You see the blue and red lights of police cars. They're here at Aliso and Alameda. There are also, we believe, officers heading in the direction of Crypto.com Arena. There are officers deployed at intersections throughout downtown LA, on freeway overpasses, on streets. They're bringing people, they're taking people into custody. Fireworks, as you see, are being hurled at them. They are using flashbang and less than lethal projectiles to try to clear intersections and clear crowds away. So what you're seeing is kind of a pyrotechnic display on both sides of this situation, in which one side is trying to keep the peace and others from the other side are bent on continuing to agitate against it. Worth noting as well, there was a crowd of several thousand people that were gathered at City Hall and at the Federal Building complex in downtown Los Angeles, the Roybal Federal Building, the Federal Court Building, and the detention center that is there. And those crowds merged and then began to move around downtown. Some elements of that crowd, the crowd numbering several thousand, some elements of the crowd spilling onto the 101 freeway, causing the shutdown of the freeway. Now, my understanding is LA Mayor Karen Bass is with us now. Madam Mayor, are you there?
I certainly am.
What a day this has been. Can you describe the situation now in terms of whether or not the law enforcement agencies are gaining the upper hand here?
Well, I do think that the Los Angeles Police Department has gained the upper hand. But one thing that happens sometimes, more than not, after a protest, a peaceful protest, then people who are involved in that protest or didn't even participate but come so that they can wreak havoc is what is happening now. So you have people dispersed running through the streets in different places in downtown and in some cases vandalizing property. And I just hope that they understand that it is not acceptable, and you might not get arrested tonight, but that does not mean that you won't get arrested in the upcoming days when the videotapes are reviewed. You know, for those same people who say that they are against ICE and they don't want federal government involved, and then they go about wreaking havoc in the city and giving and justifying the need for what the administration is doing, which I disagree, but they are reinforcing that, and I think that that is a real tragedy considering the situation that the city is dealing with.
The governor has said that the president is essentially deliberately provoking the response by some elements of these demonstrations by sending National Guard troops into Los Angeles without their being requested here. Do you share that view?
I absolutely share that view, and it's just perplexing to me as to why the administration did this. I tried for days to appeal to them that this was not necessary, and my big concern was if you send in federal troops, you are going to agitate this entire situation. I mean, we have to understand that people are really in fear. They're terrified over the raids that happen. And we hear that the raids are going to continue for days. So you're going to have people who are going to try to go to sleep tonight and be worried whether they should go to work. Kids worried whether they should go to school. And so when this kind of fear gets set because you never know when a raid is going to happen or where it is, then, you create a powder keg. And then to add fuel on that powder keg, then you bring in federal troops. And this was just, very perplexing as to why the federal government would want to do this at this time when neither he requested the help and nor did I request the help.
The president has referred to the people who are causing violence and vandalism as insurrectionists. And we have been making note of his particular use of that word to describe people who are committing crimes here. And that this may lead to his attempt to invoke the Insurrection Act to send the Marines in, federal troops, the United States Marine Corps, military forces into Los Angeles. Have you been in contact with the president to try to find out if that's what his intent is? And have you been able to in some way contact him and find out what's going on here?
I have not contacted nor have I reached out to the president directly, but I absolutely have been talking to people who are close to him. The Insurrection Act, in some ways I feel like we're a big laboratory. Why are you experimenting with us? One, having federalizing the National Guard, taking that power away from the governor. Two, having Marines, 500 Marines that are stationed not far out of Los Angeles for a situation that doesn't warrant it at all. To me, it is absolutely provocative. And that's my concern with the people that are out committing violent acts right now. I think this is exactly what is wanted. Why do we want to voluntarily participate in this experiment? The city of Los Angeles is not a laboratory. We are the nation's second largest city, and I don't think that we should be experimented with in this way. And insurrectionists, I know that's what he calls them. To me, that implies an organized movement, and I don't think what we're seeing is organized. I think it's random violence. It is unacceptable, and those people, like I said a few minutes ago, are naive if they think just because they didn't get arrested tonight that they're going to get away with this.
Are you concerned? The department is understaffed. That is a well-known thing. It's not at the level that you would like it to be in terms of personnel. Do you think that the department is up to the task of maintaining peace and establishing peace in Los Angeles?
Oh, I absolutely do think that the department is up for the task. There's no evidence that the department isn't. But these kind of measures do not help. So just imagine Los Angeles if the raid had not happened on Friday. What did this raid accomplish? When the president first talked about raids, he talked about arresting violent criminals. I don't know that there were violent criminals in the warehouses where people were working. So what was the reason for the shift? Or chasing people through the parking lot in Home Depot? They were violent criminals? So when you do this, you sow confusion. If that raid had not happened